Thank you. I want to call the Thursday, August 7th, 2025 meeting of the Brattleboro Charter Revision Commission to order. The first order of business is to approve the minutes. And we have the minutes of the July 17th, 2025 meeting. Are we ready to approve the minutes? I know we have a couple corrections that we'll pass on to Jessica.
But those are not substantive, right? They're just like name spellings and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Minor name spelling that I checked.
Perfect. So with those minor changes that'll be made in the future, I'd move approval of the minutes.
Peter has moved to approve the minutes with the small changes of the July 17th, 2025 meeting. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries 6-0. Modify the agenda if needed. The one thing I realized, we put all the backup material on the website, but I did not put on the agenda to talk about the finance stuff in conjunction with town manager and select board. So I just want to put that officially on the agenda. It's all the documents are on the website, so people have them in the world. Does anybody think of anything
You
else?
don't have it on there.
Do I? No, I mean the financial. There's more to finance.
Oh,
in
the
this.
finance section.
Yeah, than the.
Yeah.
So we have finance on there. I don't think anybody else has. Do you have anything else you're thinking of? Okay, so first order of business is to discuss the Human Services Review Committee, Finance Committee, Town Moderator, Brooks Memorial Library, Board of Trustees selection process. And we have Hillary, Francis here, our town clerk is here to sort of make sure, like, I don't know if you want to come up here, Hillary, we don't have to put you in the spotlight, but we've been talking about this with both the Finance Committee and the Human Services Committee. And I just want us, and you're gonna have to hear us talk about it again, because there's still things, but we want to make sure that whatever process we choose, actually, if it involves putting anything on the ballot, that we are doing it in a way that's correct.
I appreciate it.
So where would we like to start with this? We've talked about human services and finance, and the idea where we last left it, and we haven't, I don't think we've officially taken any kind of vote or anything, but with the Human Services and Finance Committee, where we left it at our last meeting was that we were all, or this body was leaning heavily towards having those two committees elected by the voters.
Australian ballot.
Yes, on the Tuesday in March, whenever the election is. But we did not actually officially say that's what we wanted to do. At least I cannot remember that we actually voted to do that.
No.
I think we did express our desire for that,
Yeah.
and then we didn't take action because we'll take action when we actually look at the language that specifies that.
Right, but we don't, and at this point, we don't have language yet that specifies that.
Correct. That's coming.
Right.
I think in our last draft, there was, in the section that lists out all the elected officials.
Right.
I framed it as an advisory budget committee when we talked about
Yeah.
rewording
Oh,
that.
okay.
Right.
But that is in there.
Yeah. And one of the things, and Hillary, you brought this up about that, I think it was, it was just an email to me, in the email you sent to me and Hannah and Bob about that and we sort of talked about this, I believe, with the Human Services or Finance Committee, whether we wanted those to be staggered terms, because right now it doesn't lay out.
My recollection was that Finance Committee specifically said they did not want staggered
Yes,
terms,
right.
which is why everyone was able
David's
to
on there.
Yeah.
one-year position.
Yeah. And did the Human Services Committee have a preference on staggered terms, or is just 1 year term?
I think what we were talking about was, I think you introduced the idea, or the idea of the staggered terms came up in conversation.
Yeah.
I think in the past we've had simply, one-year
Mhm.
terms.
Mhm.
But I think, as we discussed, there is value, I think, in having staggered terms specifically because of a committee that size. I think it makes
Right.
sense.
Right. So I think the question is, do we want to, and there's no rule that we have to treat the Finance Committee and the Human Services Committee the same. One doesn't have staggered terms and one does, but I don't know how everybody feels. Oh, yeah.
David's raising his hand.
Oh, yeah, please have David come on.
Thank you. David Lovelock, Chair of the Finance Committee, District 9. Yes, I think we said one-year terms were sufficient. We typically do get some staggering going on, but it's a fairly big commitment. It is for Human Services as well, but there's more history there than with the Finance Committee. So I think the Finance Committee was satisfied with one-year terms.
Okay.
Thank you.
And you folks are satisfied with one-year terms?
Excuse me?
And the Human Services Committee is satisfied with one-year terms? Or did I just miss them?
No, I
Here.
was just saying that I like the idea of the staggered
Okay.
terms. Because of the size of
Okay.
the committee, it really kind of, what we talked was about the value
Mhm.
of having members of the committee, with experience. And, to have a turnover completely
Right.
of 11 people every year would be
Mhm.
a migraine.
Okay. So we
No,
do staggered terms.
yeah, for human services.
Right.
So we talked a little bit about how people would get on the ballot.
Right, that's what Hillary can make sure we're doing right. I mean, there are two ways we can do it. We can have petitions where people have to go out and get X amount of signatures, or we can do what's the thing?
The consent form.
Consent form. And that's just a person walking in and saying, I want to be on the Finance Committee and I want my name on the ballot. So that's a decision we have to make. And then there's the timing, because we do want to put these on, and there hasn't been anything in the charter that lays out the timing of petitions or anything to date. Like, it's not,
I know that for officers, that's set by statute.
mhm.
I think representative town meeting members, it states that it follows the same as statute.
Mhm.
And so I guess I would clarify that if they're doing petitions, I would think that it would be the same as any officer. So the moderator, select board listers all need 30 signatures from registered Brattleboro voters. So it's at large, it's not by district, rather than the representative town meeting, which is 10.
Mhm.
So if you're doing petition, you'd want to think about, is it 30, is it 10, is it some other number, or is it just the consent form indicating that they're consenting for us to put their name on the ballot and how they want their name to appear. And then timing, do you want me to go into that now, or would you like me to wait?
No,
Yeah.
might as well tell,
Okay.
yeah, tell us.
So per 17 VSA 2681A and B, the timeline for anybody to get, whether it's representative town meeting, and that's per our charter, or officers per statute, it's the 6th Monday preceding the election. And our preference would definitely be to stay aligned with that. Anything less than that puts us in a crunch. The day that that deadline hits, 5 p.m., we are taking that ballot, proofing it, sending it to the printers so that they have time to pull it together in the format that it needs to be, send it back to us, we then proof it again. There are a lot of edits back and forth, and then we are usually getting the ballot the day or the day before we're required to by statute. So anything less than that cuts it really, really short.
You said the 6th Monday before the election.
Correct.
Yeah.
So the election's on Tuesday, the first Monday before is the day before, right? And then 5 Mondays before that.
So basically, whatever we did with these committees, and if we do the library board, should just follow what everybody else has to do now.
And can you remind me, I read all of the notes, I just can't remember. Is Human Service Review Committee staying at 11 members per this? And are we setting a number for Finance Committee?
Yes,
Do we know what that number is?
we do.
Maximum of 7.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's helpful as I think about designing the ballot and the layout.
Yeah.
This past year was a very contentious year, more than we've ever seen, not just with candidates, but also with the number of questions on the ballot. And so we had to go to an 18-inch long ballot, which was my first time with that experience, double-sided. And I brought some just to show you, like, you don't need to see the details, but there was some white space on the bottom of the front page and white space on the bottom of the back page. I would worry if we ever got to a point of there being too much on the ballot that we couldn't fit it on one double-sided 18-inch, because I think 18 inch is the longest they'll go. And I'm sure it's doable, I just don't have experience and know how it works if you had multiple page ballots. I have to imagine it's doable, or they'll go to tiny font. But, you know, just thinking about it, if we're not doing representative town meeting,
Right.
and we add finance and human service review committee, I think there's plenty of room on the ballot in place of RTM to do something like that.
Okay. David Minor.
So I think similar to the Finance Committee, we were talking about being up to 11.
Yeah.
And also we asked about for a petition with 10 signatures, as opposed to by simple consent.
Yeah.
So you want a petition?
Yes.
Now, and Hillary, and Hannah, you folks would know this one. So the moderator per statute has to get 30 signatures? Okay.
I believe so.
Yeah, there's nothing about it in the charter, so I assume it comes from statute.
Okay. So there's nothing we can do about that.
Right.
Well, we could
Could.
propose that
We
it be
could,
a
less.
different number here in
Okay.
Brattleboro, but
Because I know our moderator was wondering why they had to go and get 30 signatures when other people can just get a consent form. And I said we would address it all here.
I think it might be worth addressing for any elected position if a consent is appropriate for an incumbent. I think that's what the moderator's concern, right?
Yeah.
Like, and we might be able to add something like that in to cover any town level positions.
Mhm. Now, is it right, though, to let somebody, just because they're an incumbent, not have to go get signatures?
So I would
Okay.
say that that's what we currently do with representative town meeting.
Yeah.
If you're currently serving and your term is up, I mail out a letter of intent and somebody just needs to sign it
Mhm.
and send it back, make sure none of their information has changed, and then their name is automatically on the ballot. It doesn't mean they're automatically elected.
Right.
It means that they have in the past gathered signatures from the voters who have expressed interest in them serving, and it just simply puts their name on the ballot.
So the first year, at least, Human Services would have to do petition. And I don't know how David feels about petition, or he just wants people to certify that they want to be on the Finance Committee. Is he there?
I would suggest that it be the same for both
I think it has to
boards.
be.
And
Yeah.
I think that there is some value in having to go out and get signatures at least the first time, or maybe periodically, like every X number of terms, you have to re-up or whatever, but I think that there is some value in that, and it should be the same for both to minimize confusion.
Joy.
you mentioning terms reminded me that I believe it's a state statute that advisory boards have to, it's a maximum of 10 years you have to roll off for one, and on our
9
current,
years.
well, and our current is 3 years, so you roll off at 9,
Right.
have to take a year off and then come back. Is it possible that these other finance and human services might be held to a similar standard? Unless that's not a state statute that
opinion.
That's in the charter. I don't know that that's a state
Okay.
statute thing.
Yeah.
I think it gets really complicated to have this sort of like hybrid thing where it's following some other rules for a non-elected committee and some rules for an elected committee, but Hillary has some thoughts on this too.
Yeah, I think as I'm hearing this conversation, I think I'm slightly concerned about the tracking on our end. Right, it's one thing if it's, okay, you're an incumbent, now from now on, you get the ability to sign this letter of intent, which consents your name on the ballot. If it's once every X number of terms, you have to get petitions again, that's something we have to track.
Right.
If it's, you serve 3 terms of 3 years per term, and then you have to go off 1 year, and that's happening for one committee and not the other, and it just becomes, we don't necessarily have the database ability to track that. And the state just rolled out a new election system, and we're trying really hard. Thus far, we've sort of downloaded from their system into an Access database so that we can do all of the local tracking that we need to because we can't do it in theirs. And we're trying to get them to work with us to build up this new system so that we can just use their system and not have to upload and download every night. It just gets a little crazy during super busy times. And so the less complex tracking that we have to do for multiple seats and multiple boards, the less room there is for human error, and the more integrity our elections have.
Right. So it's either every year, everybody has to go out and get 10 signatures, or every year the incumbent signs a consent form, and if you're not an incumbent, you go and get the 10 signatures. That's probably one of those is the easiest
Right.
trackable.
And if you're an incumbent on the finance committee and you want to go for the human service review committee, you then have to take out a petition.
Petition
You're
for
not just
that.
an incumbent, so you get to, yeah.
David,
Okay, David Lovemark again, District 9. I'm still not clear if Human Services and Finance have maximum years of service, continuous service of 9 years or not. I hope that's not the case. As to petitions, I would rather go collect petitions in October than in January, but I think it's reasonable to ask for petitions. Yeah, that's fine. In terms of consent forms, once you have been elected, both committees will face the voters every couple of years. So I'm not sure that petitions will do all that much once you're already been elected to the committee.
Now,
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm reading this thing, it's on page 4. A member of any appointed commission or committee shall not serve more than 9 consecutive years.
yeah,
I think the
doesn't-
last sentence specifically says it doesn't apply to elected officials.
Yeah, it said, yeah, this section does not apply to representative town meeting members or to appointed town officials. So these people wouldn't be appointed anyway, they're gonna be elected.
Right.
Yeah, so we wouldn't have to worry about that. All right. And, yeah, Peter.
We got a few different questions in front of us simultaneously, so I think there's some clarity in what we've heard, and I would offer my opinion as well, that because the voters are gonna make this decision, it feels right that we not try to impose on either of these that same term limit that applies to the appointed, so I think we can leave that alone.
Yeah.
I totally agree that in the first instance, when somebody's running for the first time, they ought to get signatures. I guess I'm agnostic to whether it's a special 10 that we would specify in here versus the 30 that would apply as standard. I'm not sure that the advantage of incumbency, other than as a convenience, I mean, I understand why an incumbent would prefer to be able to just get back on the ballot without having to collect the 10 or 30 signatures again. But either the 10 or the 30, especially the 10, is a pretty low bar. And it, you know, select board members have to go out and get them. The moderator has to go out and get them. It feels appropriate to me that when somebody's term is coming up that they would go out. David makes the point of, you know, you can go out early. It's not like you have to run around for, you know, a week or so urgently in January. It can be a thing that you collect over some time prior to that. So it feels like an appropriate standard to maintain, that people would get submit a petition each time they're going to be on the ballot.
Especially if we make it 10.
Especially if we make it 10.
I think a clarifying question that, because there are other petitions that need a date and are valid for X amount of time,
Oh.
Hillary, when somebody goes for the position and gets the 10 signatures, let's say historically RTM, I can't recall if there's a date and if it expires.
It doesn't expire. We usually don't make them available. We start working on thinking about March in November. And so about early to mid-November is when I start pulling petitions together. And then we usually run a press release in early December that they're available. But if somebody comes in and says, I want a petition, you know, in mid-November, once we have them drafted and drawn up, I'm happy to issue one. But we don't usually have them, I mean, you've got to think about every other year, we've got a November election that we're trying to get through, and then we have that reporting. And so we sort of get through one election, close that out, and then we start thinking about the next on election years. So I don't think that I would start that process before we close out the November election.
And you would do you think there would be a date of signature? So if Hannah comes to me and I sign her petition, I have to date it?
So that doesn't exist currently. There was, I'm trying to remember, we were just having a conversation about that as it relates to, I was reading through the track changes as it relates to the recall petition and saying that petitions, signatures only last for 30 days. And so somebody would have to put the date on there. I think for a recall petition, it's slightly different. It's a little bit more, not to say that that these other ones aren't serious, but if somebody's going through a recall, it's severe. So I think that starting the process in mid-November and saying that you have to, like this past year, the deadline was January 27th, right? So that gives somebody just over 2 months to get the signatures, and that seems reasonable to me. Oftentimes people are traveling in January or December, and they're not around to get the signatures. And so if we said, sorry, you have to wait until December, they're not here to get the signatures that they need because they're traveling for the winter. And so we don't want it to be a hardship, but I wouldn't start in October.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? So the petition is specific to an individual election, it's not a generic form?
Correct.
I think that sort of, it's like that gives, like that's why you can't get it early and why it expires, because it is only for a particular election and there is a deadline.
Right, and what we do, so we don't have a petition on the website that anybody can just start circulating. They have to come in and we'll type in their legal name or their registered name, the name that they're registered to vote under. If they have a nickname, right, it might be Peter Pete Elwell, if you want that Pete. Right? So it'll say what office they're running for, what term, right? Select board might be a 1-year or a 3-year term, and the date of the election. So we populate all of that. It's typed so that it's legible. And then they can start circulating the signatures. But they have to come in and go through that process. They can't just print it out and do it without us being aware first.
And I guess to be clear then, I am fine with that process as it could apply to finance and human services.
So, quick question, and now since, hypothetically, it doesn't have to be, anymore that district, if that person's in that district, any more people go that route, but they just have to make sure that they're registered, if anything.
Yeah.
Registered
That
to
they're
vote.
registered to vote and they're signing with because they have to put their address.
Right.
And it needs to be the address where they're registered to vote. So if you recently moved and you didn't inform us at the town clerk's office to update your voter registration, if you sign with a different address, number one, we won't count that. But number two, it's a flag for us and we're going to challenge you in the system and mail you a letter to be like, hey, did you move? Do you still live at this address or should we update your address?
Right.
So it's a trigger for us to keep our voter checklist up to date and clean, but that signature won't count.
And that leaves that person now to go back out to,
Right.
Well, if they got more than 10
right,
signatures,
they always say give
then they
18
can,
or something,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think Gary's point is gonna be new for people because we're not gonna, and people still live in District 7, 8, and 9.
Right.
But when you're going and being a finance committee member or human services review committee member, you're not running in either District 7, 8, 9, you're a town-wide thing.
And the town meeting day ballot, we might even rethink how we structure election day.
Right.
Because, right, if on state primary and general elections, you still have state reps
Right,
and the
right.
districts are relevant. But if we're not doing representative town meeting anymore and people aren't voting for their representatives, all of the officers are at large.
Right.
And so we might just do straight alpha when
Yeah.
you're checking in and not by district. I don't know, that would be something that we'd have to think about.
Yeah.
But yes, everybody, I believe, would be running at large.
Yeah. Yeah,
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah, yeah. Peter?
Yeah, I think I've changed my opinion and I'm no longer agnostic on the 10 versus 30. Because in the fullness of the conversation, I always appreciate the conversation and the different thoughts people shared. It seems as though well, it is true, the only office for which it was 10 was representative town meeting representative. And it was 1/3 representing a district rather than the whole town, and the threshold was 1/3 of the 30 at 10. Feels like there's not a rational basis on which we would say 10 for these instead of just 30 like it is for the other offices.
Can I just make a counterpoint to that, which
Sure.
is that a lot of the other offices, there's one person, whereas there are 11 people. So if all 11 have to go out, they have to get, I mean, they could all theoretically get the same 30, but they get 330 signatures.
That Hillary has to check.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
not just that, but like, it just because there are more people running, like there's just less people to get signatures from for each person, like per capita kind of thing. I mean, they could all get
So
them from all
there
the same
can be
people,
overlap.
but
I mean-
Yeah, I mean, that's my one argument in favor of a lower threshold is because there are so many people
Mhm.
running for this position that there should maybe be a slightly lower threshold.
Now, can I ask you a question to Hillary? Can you sign as many petitions as open seats? Like, there are 11 seats, can you sign 11 petitions?
So the law used to be that if there were 11 seats, you can only sign up to 11
Right.
petitions. The legislature realized that by signing a petition, you're not actually voting for somebody,
Mhm.
you're just agreeing to help them get on the ballot. And so they've done away with that.
Okay.
So if there are 11 seats and there's 20 petitions, you can sign all 20 of them. So we don't need to track how many petitions Kate O'Connor signed.
Right.
Us verifying petitions, I mean, we verified close to 120 petitions this past March, or leading up to this past March, while we were short-staffed. It was a lot of work, but it was manageable. We're talking about doing away with the RTM seats. I'm not concerned about verifying 30 signatures per petition. That's not a concern of mine.
Okay. So,
Does David or David Levenbach, do you have any thoughts about numbers of signatures on the petition?
10 or 30 are fine. I understand what Peter's saying, and it makes sense. And I'm very happy to hear that you don't have to confirm that an individual hasn't signed more than 11.
Yeah.
That would be a nightmare. But that's I think whichever direction you want to go. And I think too, using the consent in that environment, if you go to 30, probably even that makes even more sense for the incumbent.
I would also offer that, this isn't the case for everybody, but when you're getting 10 signatures, oftentimes your family who might live in your district is 8 of those. You can sign it yourself. And the whole point of the petitions is so that you're out there talking to your neighbors. They're learning where you stand, you're learning where they stand. I think that having a threshold that matches that intent makes sense versus checking a box and saying you did it. I think 10 or 30 or 50 or whatever you all decide is fine. Just again, hearing that conversation, it's, what's the intent of this? Yeah.
is David?
Mr. Levenbach?
Hi, I can probably find 10 people who will agree to sign my petition. Finding 30 might be a little tricky. No, I think I can do 30, but I think 10 is probably sufficient for a position which isn't always that much fun and doesn't pay.
Interesting. And is advisory.
Yeah.
I think that's something worth our thinking about as well, that in both cases, these are advisory bodies. A little bit more binding with what comes forward from Human Services, but still in all the final action is with the Select Board, so. Under what we're proposing.
And
What if we made the number 15? Which means
But-
you probably wouldn't just have your neighbors sign.
you would. Yes, you would.
Stay by
Yes,
price
you would.
shopper.
So I think the question is, how many signatures, and do we want a
Yeah.
consent form? I mean, do you, once you're an incumbent, do you get a consent form? Like, Gary?
Well, I was wondering between what the amount, the high and the lowest, we mentioned that before, Human Services, what's the least and what's the greatest? Not just for a quorum, but for how many people? Because 9 times out of 10, a lot of people who sign in don't really, stay, or whatever. But I was just trying to get like a number for it. Because the Human Services, most of them is odd number. And I think we said 11, but the least to have on there, what's the least number that we would, consider as far as having that for a type of committee as well? So
We have it. It was not, wasn't it 9?
Yeah, I think it was, I'm trying to remember, there was a least number. And I'm also curious with the Finance Committee, how they also have.
5,
So it's 5, okay.
Yeah.
7, maximum of 7, minimum of 5.
I would ask them, the question is, if you don't hit the minimum, does the committee exist?
Correct.
So I think that going up to 11, or going up to 7, 6, or whatever
yes.
the Finance Committee allows them the flexibility for the committee to be able to exist.
Or make recommendations, I don't know if that's still something you can do.
That's what I was gonna say, or, right, if there's For human services, you also, the low is 9, right? If there's 7, then the 7 existing could always appoint another 2 to get to that minimum.
I think,
Yeah, 'cause it's
isn't
the
isn't that what we discussed last week,
Yeah, we're gonna have the moderator,
or last meeting?
isn't it?
Yeah, it would
The
be-
moderator.
The moderator would fill to
And-
get up to the minimum.
And I think it is important to have a minimum for the purposes of what a quorum is, and,
Yeah.
you know, I think you do have to
Yeah.
set a floor and a ceiling.
Yeah.
So long as we're gonna have the moderator fill the seats to get to that minimum number, I think that's fine. Then it can be 5 to 7 and
And then
9 to 11.
Right. And then they were like, yes, David.
So if Hannah, in the example where if the minimum was 9 for human services, if we only had 8, is the committee able to function?
The town moderator would fill the last seat.
Okay, but and sometimes that takes time, so if we end up a person resigning in the midst of what's going on, and also too, if in the midst of what's going on with human services, if somebody in October resigns, trying to find somebody new to join in what's going on, and I'm just using October based on our current calendar, that would probably change. But, you know, it's hard to come up with a viable solution. So we'd be able to continue to function with only 8 when, you know, it might make sense just to do that.
And that has that.
So I would say, I would consider that it's not done in a vacuum, and the charter would not lay out the process for the next person, so it could be lifted up directly from the committee. I would think, you know, it could be the easy of looking at the people who lifted their names up but didn't get elected. But the process of getting that next person isn't laid out in the charter, nor do I think it should be. And so the committee would be able to go, oh yeah, this is somebody that we know, and give it to the moderator, that name, and say, would you consider this as a replacement? So that process can be what each committee needs.
And I appreciate that. The question is, I guess my question is, if we're down to 8, do we need to get the 9th? That's one question. And then my other question would be, what would then be a quorum? Is the quorum based on 9, or is the quorum based on the existing number of members?
Do you make up your, I mean, not, makeup is not the right term, but do you promulgate your own procedures as a committee?
We have our procedures, which actually we reviewed with Hannah and Bob, and so there's, you know, that is looked at, and it's being looked at as we speak.
So that could be something that you put in your procedures, right?
Yeah.
How strongly do you feel about 11 versus 9?
As a maximum? So I would say, so,
Get some water.
so Peter, the question about being 11, are you suggesting then we move down to say,
I'm not suggesting it, I'm exploring. It feels a little awkward. We're trying to get as much alignment as we can, and it feels a little awkward to have the max of 11 and the max of 9, and so I'm just thinking about that. And I was also thinking about, regardless of the answer on 11, whether the floor ought to be 7 in both cases, so that we're able to say 4. If you got fewer than 4, you can't function. With 4, you could still function. I mean, it would be hopefully a very rare occurrence that we were down that low. But that would still be a majority of the minimum membership would be 4. It avoids the crisis situation you've described where you fall 1 below the minimum number and you're out of business. 1 below the minimum number would still be above the quorum for the minimum number.
well, but we can find that in the process and procedures as Joanne and Hannah were talking about. And, you know, to make sure that we are able to continue to function. I mean, I'd hate to have two things. 4 would not work. Absolutely positively,
Okay.
it would not work.
Okay.
But I think that if we, working with going up to, for instance, as an example, it allows us, okay, say we start with 10, and we lose a person, we don't need to do anything.
But then how do we define quorum if it's up to?
Well, but is a quorum based on so if we have 11 and 2 people resign, that means we've got 9 filled positions, and a quorum, would it be 5, or would a quorum be legally 6?
Well, 3.
No.
I would be curious if quorum is, so the maximum is set on the day of election. That is your number, and quorum is then based off of, so if that 11th person doesn't get voted in because either no one filled out the petitions or they didn't get enough votes, but and then maybe your procedures as you work on them incorporates some language that says the number is set on election day. That is and then from that flows all these other items.
But if you say up to 11 and only 2 people run, then you got 2 people.
Right.
We've said up to 11, well,
So we need a minimum.
we need a minimum.
You're describing a good reason for a minimum, and we have a mechanism for filling those slots with the moderator appointing, so it feels like we should have a floor. But it still raises to me the question of whether we should try to standardize the minimum and maximum for these 2 committees. I don't think we have to, but it's worth considering, I think.
David?
I don't think that's important because they function differently.
Okay.
I haven't been on human services, but I've been on finance,
And so my technical question as to what constitutes a quorum.
Right.
Is it based on, as Joy was describing, the number of positions filled at the election, or is it based on the number of certified members of the committee as of a certain time? We could have a 10, for example, that were elected, and 1 person resigns, and now we're down to 9.
Hillary?
I think it's a really important question, and I would hope that you all would define that in the charter, because I know that that's been a question every year with representative town meeting.
Yeah, that's true.
What's a quorum? Is it the number of seats filled, or is it the number of seats available?
Right.
And, it's important to just have that laid out.
David.
David has something to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if we've been doing something wrong, but we've been a little careless this year, as has happened in the past. We had 8 people elected to the Finance Committee, 2 people stepped down. We have acted as if the membership is now 6, and a quorum is 4 people at a meeting. So we don't do it on the basis of the number of people. Quorum isn't based on the number of people elected. Quorum is based on the number of active members. And I think the same thing would work for human services. I will also say that if we came, close to losing another member, we might go to the moderator and say, now we're looking like we might be shorthanded. Let's add someone. But at 6, we think we're in good shape. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Hannah?
Can I make a suggestion, which would be to say that the quorum is the number of people elected, and the moderator can fill positions necessary to get back to a quorum. So in the example, if you had 11 and you go down to 10, quorum's still the same. And so you wouldn't need to fill that position, but if you go down to 9, then you need to add at least 1 more. Would that maybe, just so you're not having to
Yeah.
fill up all of the, and like David's example, you don't want to bring someone in late in the process, especially in human services where you're reviewing all these applications and all of this, but you are making sure there's a base level of the people you need to function. I don't know how to
Yeah.
explain that articulately,
So,
but
I like it. And I think there's so many different ways you could cut it, right? Like, we just need to decide on one. It feels to me like a simpler thing for people to understand would be that it's, I can't remember which David said it, but the quorum for the number of members that are actually on the committee at any given time. And that the trigger, I like the idea of having a trigger for when the moderator must appoint, but it feels like that could be when the committee falls below minimum. So if minimum for both was 7, so long as they had at least 7, the moderator wouldn't need to appoint. But if they ever got down to 6, the moderator would need to appoint. But for the number above 7, however many they were above would determine what the quorum is at that time. It feels like that might be easier for the people who are actually functioning in this work, because it would be at that given moment in time.
You go ahead, Dave.
No, I was gonna say, I think actually David and I
Yeah.
said the same thing, maybe a little slightly different way, so.
And I was just gonna say, basically, finance and human services are totally two separate monsters. Human services, you have a certain amount of time, once all that paperwork comes in, to have it ready to present, but finance committee functions continually. So for someone to drop off and then have them catch up becomes the conundrum. So I think what you and David were saying, you probably would have to set or etch in stone that amount, you know, but realistically, there are times when people, you know, fall by the wayside. So that's the thing, to have them immediately in there, because once you start getting to a certain part of the quarter and you're already doing everything and you're ready to present, it's kind of late for that. So that's the only issue that I think, from my experience being on it. You know, it takes a while to bring people up to speed. Once you've gotten all that paperwork in for organizations and then explaining to them, versus finance, you have that other information back. This is like, you know, something that's gonna have to probably have something where it's gonna be a mechanism that's gonna function.
Right. So we've got, so what the proposal's been is for finance committee to be up to 7, but no less than 5. Tell me if I got that right. And Dave in human services wants up to 11, but no less than 9. So that's where we are. So getting 5 is when it's triggered to get the moderator, or according to what we were talking about, without changing the numbers.
So
5 and 9. Yeah.
if we get down below 9, then we have to step up and do it. So maybe if we went from 7 to 11, that would give us the flexibility that
Yeah.
finance.
And then the floor for both is 7, which I think has some sort of neatness to
No.
it.
I don't think the finance committee works with more than, with 11 people, to be honest with you.
Finance is 5 to 7.
5 to
Yeah.
Oh,
7.
5 to 7, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
it's 5
Okay, I
to
was thinking
7.
7 to 9, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
5 to 7.
So 5 to 7 and 7 to 11 is what the two would be.
Yeah. Does that sound good?
And it would only be if either one falls below their minimum
Right.
that the moderator would need to appoint.
But
Yes.
but the committee could ask the moderator to
Yes.
appoint even when it
During the
gets.
year, that's
to-
right.
When it
And
gets to 6. They don't have to wait till it gets to 4.
Not 4.
No, but what I'm saying is that there's no reason the moderator, say it was at 11, and they all got down to 10, and the committee had somebody they'd like the moderator to appoint. The moderator can appoint that person.
Yes,
But it has to, they have to be appointed when it gets down to 6.
yes,
So,
when
yes.
they get down to 6, that's right.
But that doesn't preclude the committee finding somebody.
That's right.
Anytime they want it. I
That's
just want to
right.
make sure.
As
that
long
that's-
as there's a seat available.
Right,
Up
right,
to 11.
right.
Yes,
Okay.
I think that's right. I think we're landing in the
Okay.
place.
So if we do those numbers, now the thing is about the petitions.
Ooh.
Oh, I'm sorry, Joy.
Thing on that, just because it's always up to 11, does any words, or would there then be a mechanism? So a scenario again, 10 are voted up to 11, and the committee forms, can they bring to the moderator, we want an 11th, and here's the name we want?
I think
I
they
think
should
they
be able
can.
to do that since
Yeah.
we're saying max of 11 serve.
Yeah.
My one concern with letting them have some discretion about appointing new people is, what if that 11th person was someone who had been on the committee previously and was voted out?
Well, then
There's a
presumably the
moderator.
moderator wouldn't appoint.
Right.
Yeah.
That would be something the moderator would take into consideration before
Yeah.
making that appointment.
Because it's not the committee that's doing the appointing.
Right.
It's an outside third-party independent person who,
I feel like the moderator should be more of a backstop to make sure they're meeting that minimum, and it shouldn't be a sort of discretionary thing to fill positions above that.
Mhm.
But I'm not gonna die on that hill, it's just a thought.
And I only bring it up because it's a potential inch in the door that
Yep.
could be kicked open that we will have to live with for up to 15 years.
Well, and so maybe we shouldn't open that. I'm inclined to agree with Hannah. I'm also not going to die on that hill, but the purpose of having the moderator be able to appoint is to make sure that we stay functional, and we're determining minimums
Yeah.
to stay functional.
all right.
So
So
I
the- so the
could be
moderator-
happy with the moderator only appointing if we go below the minimum.
Okay, that's fine with me too.
I'm
Is
sure
there a
it's
fourth?
discretionary.
Do we hear a fourth?
Yeah,
I don't have any problem with that.
okay.
Is it offensive to either of you two?
No, I'm just making sure. So what happens there's 10 up to 11, an open position. So right in this model that you said, it is okay that the committee brings an 11th name.
No, it's actually the
Okay,
opposite of
just wanna
that.
make
It's
sure.
not okay.
Okay, that the committee
Your-
is what it is on election day.
Your phrasing about the opening of the door and like, we don't know what might happen with that's what caused me to feel stronger about like, hey, you're right, we should make sure that like the will of the voters is followed, except when it can't be,
Yeah.
because we're falling below it.
And the whole thing about this is, okay, we're talking about the finance committee. They get to 4, their minimum is supposed to be 5. The moderator then can only appoint 1 person, or can they appoint
That's right.
2 persons? So,
The moderator's gonna appoint
Right.
one so that they have the minimum so that they can function.
okay, so it's never gonna go, it'll never go above minimum.
With a moderator's appointment, it
Right,
won't.
Right, and then the next year is when the seat will be up,
That's right.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
only to continue this visit with the dentist a little bit longer. So in Joy's example, if only 10 members are elected, that is our cap
Right.
until the following election.
Right.
Yes.
But it could go lower.
No, but that's our.
You
cap.
wouldn't go up to 11
Right.
under any circumstances.
So to prevent, as you're describing, us going out or the committee going out and grabbing anyone.
Yes, that's right.
And then, if it falls, following what Kate was just saying, if it falls below, the number falls below 7, yes, we need 1 to get to minimum, but would we be able to, as a committee, get a couple more?
No.
Well, no, but we were at 10.
Yeah, but I don't think we should do that because, first of all, it's hopefully going to be very rare that the moderator ever has to appoint under any circumstances. But if the moderator does, we really want to use that tool that doesn't involve the voters
Mhm.
only to the minimum that it's necessary
Okay.
to use it.
Okay, no, I just wanted to understand.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I'm not suggesting you would do this, but you could imagine a scenario where 11 people get elected, 5 people get bullied out by the other 6, and then they sort of go to the moderator and handpick all their replacements.
Mhm.
And that's not really the will of the voters.
Right.
No, I think we're landing in a really good place.
Yeah.
Really grateful for everybody's perseverance and patience. We on other nights when there have been more than just the 2 of you in these seats, we've been accused of going way too deep down rabbit holes. And I think this is a really good example of how
Right.
these deeper, complicated discussions are important and get us to good outcomes.
Yeah. Okay. So we all feel comfortable with that?
Yeah,
Hillary, does
we
that-
haven't
like, you
talked
don't
about
see any
the-
red flags?
No?
We haven't talked about the library board.
No, but let's talk about, do we want to talk about what I know, and I don't know if there's any legal reason that the library board could not be appointed by the select board, because I think that's where they're leaning, is they like to be appointed by the select board. I did explain that just because the library board would like the library board to be appointed by the select board, the current charter, because I'm on the library board, so I know this. The library board nominates people, and their names come up on the floor of the
Mhm.
RTM. But in the charter, it's not just the library board that can nominate. The select board can nominate, the public can get up and say, I want to be on it. So I did say to the library board, just because the select board appoints doesn't mean they're gonna appoint who the library board wants.
Mhm.
I'm assuming it will be an open process, just like it is now, into any board. So that's the, so however the library board is appointed, it's going to be an open process. So whether it's an election by the people and whether it's the select board doing it, it's not the library board of trustees saying, here's the 3 people we want, give them to us.
And I'm not sure how the library board currently behaves, but if that's the language that's put in, given the other language which we have clarified, they would have term limits. They would have.
Yeah, we already do, yes,
Okay.
yes. We already go for the 9-year thing and people get booted off, yeah.
Now, how does that look on a ballot, the library, now that you're not doing?
So it
that?
won't.
It won't be.
If we go
It'll
this
just
way.
be a regular vote?
No.
It won't be on the ballot if we do what Kate just described. It'll be a select board process, just like
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Just like
DRB
A
or
regular
Right.
committee.
planning commission or
Planning
recreation
commission.
board.
Right, right. So that's the question. I mean, obviously, they're gonna have to go through the process that we all decide, but
Yeah.
that is the position that has been expressed to me,
That's fine.
Okay.
that they want that. And then the moderator will just keep doing the way we've been doing it. And it's just a matter of now figuring out
Yeah, so with the trustees, under state statute, it's actually that they're appointed by the select board unless the town chooses to vote on it. So
That's fine.
we can revert back to state
Perfect.
statute.
And just let the select
Perfect.
board, and so we don't even have to address it in the charter. Statute would govern and it would be.
Yeah, I think
done
that's
by
the only reason
board.
it is addressed this way in the charter is because they
It was
wanted to
different.
vary
Right.
from state statute.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there value in having it continue to stay in the charter?
Right.
Is it a holdover in a potential transition of information, or because so much is being changed, to leave it in, and then again, maybe the next crew and up to 15 years from now might remove it? But just because words have been said, and to remove it might.
I think that the rest of it should stay because it is this weird sort of hybrid where it is a town department, which should probably be defined in
Yeah.
here,
Mhm.
but we can take out basically all of section B.
About the trustees.
The method of appointment.
Right, but Joy's question is, do we put something in that the trustees are appointed by the select board, just so that people now know that's how it's done, because it hasn't been done like that?
We've discussed the pros and cons of that before. I don't have a strong feeling either way.
But you're saying the section might be able to go, or it still needs listed because it's a department?
Well, section 7 should stay, but subsection B should go.
What page are you on, Hannah?
3,
Page 3 of the charter.
B should go, but the rest could stay?
Yeah, because the rest talks.
Updated as needed.
well, the first sentence of B can stay and the rest of it can go.
Yeah,
Well,
because the first, the A talks about how the board is, or the library is incorporated. Then B talks about the library trustees and how they're elected. And then C talks about what the library board of trustees does in relation to the operating procedures of the library.
Yes, we could just
And then-
strike that second sentence of B and leave the rest of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep, so, yeah, so that's easy.
Good.
Okay, we got that figured out. So now the question is about finance and human services, the signatures that we want to have. I'm assuming we're sort of leaning on, it seems as though we all want signatures, it's just the number.
Yeah.
And I don't think 30's out of control, but then when Peter puts it in perspective of, it's an advisory board and,
Yes, and I think there's also this question about being able to do the, just signing the form thing when you're an incumbent.
Yeah,
So, somebody said, somewhere during the discussion about, if we did go to 30, that might provide a greater basis on which to allow an incumbent to just
right.
sign a form. I actually would rather people need to get signatures every time, and I would be happy to compromise on that to say we could do 10 or 15, but you got to get them every time.
Yeah.
It feels like that's more true to the intent of the petition process that Hillary described, and getting onto the ballot and getting elected to the position.
Well, if they have to do it every time, I would go to 15.
Yeah,
I can
that's
support
fine.
that.
Yeah, I can support that too.
Cool.
And that doesn't, that's okay, does that sound good, Hillary, to you, if we did 15 signatures?
Sure.
Then you wouldn't have to keep track of anything either, because they'd have to come back.
Right, yep, yep. But yeah, that all sounds fine to me.
Okay.
Great.
Okay, so we don't have to, moderator's just gonna stay the same.
Yeah, sorry to David, I'm just gonna have to.
You're gonna get your 30, you're gonna have to get your 30. The library, it will be
No,
done
he
by,
has to get 15.
oh, I thought we,
No,
No,
no, just
moderator
for
would
the
be
two
30.
boards would be.
Oh, the
15.
oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
the-
that David.
because the
I'm sorry.
moderator
has real authority.
Too many Davids, sorry.
too many Davids. The moderator will have to get 30. Finance is going to be between 5 and 7. Human services will be 7 to 11. Moderator will appoint when they get under their minimum number. And
Hannah will write the language.
Any other meetings this month?
Yeah.
Great.
And we do have, we won't look at it now because we can put it in here, the definitions of what the human services and finance committees are, which haven't changed really since November.
I would also remind you to just clarify what quorum is.
Yes, I have a big,
Yeah, I
Yeah.
have defined quorum.
but I'm.
Quorum, I liked where we were, I think, landing, that it's gonna be the, based on the number of members serving at any given time.
Yeah.
I'm writing that down so we remember. As our, and then Hannah will figure out that's like legally okay. All right. All right, so do we feel okay about where we are on this?
Yep.
Okay. Now, Hillary, those were our major things for you. I mean, you're happy to sit here with us for the next 2 hours.
Or if there's anything else you want to
Yeah,
address with us.
Yeah.
I mean, I looked at, I guess, the previous draft of track changes,
Yeah.
and Jane and I looked at it together, and we definitely had some comments. I didn't bring those all with me. I sent them to Kate, Hannah, and Bob.
Yeah.
I can find them in my email and read them aloud if you'd like me to. I know that a lot of the stuff that I sent is not warned as part of discussion for right now. But I also don't know that I can come back to another August
Yeah.
meeting.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, I have that list.
Because we have a lot of other business to cover tonight, and you have already provided those comments to the chair and the town attorney and the person who's both a member of this body and with the town attorney, it feels to me like that's adequately covered for now. I have a question, if you don't mind answering, which is, would you be available even by a phone call to provide any kind of clarification if we needed some clarification of what you had provided in writing sometime between now and when we finish our work on the 28th of August?
So I will not be on the 14th or 21st, but I can be available by phone or joining remote.
Or even outside of a meeting. I'm not thinking
Oh, yes,
necessarily
yes,
during
yes.
the meeting times.
Of course, I am not available the 15th through the 22nd,
Okay.
but the week of the 25th I'm available
Great.
and up until.
Just so that we were able, once we've had some discussion of these things as a group, if we land in a place that isn't clear and we need to check back with you about it, just to make sure that we still can do that during August, that'd be great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we should put it on the agenda for next meeting so that if we have questions, Hillary will be around.
Yeah, and my plan too was to, once we get this all done, is to we'll run it by Hillary again, everything again.
Yeah.
So important.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Because what you sent, the good thing is, one of them we just talked about, Budget Advisory Committee, multi-year, so this is off the list. But,
And some of them were just thoughts and some of them were concerns.
yeah,
And I think that I clarified those.
I think some of them we have addressed previous meetings and we can just get you answers on that.
yeah, yeah. Because some of them weren't incorporated yet into the tract changed, the draft with the tract changes that I sent you.
Okay,
but now we're getting, and then we're gonna incorporate what we are looking tonight at into it, so we can send it to you more fully. And there was a couple, well, I keep going on now, but there was something about if something should be under a voter section or whatever, and what we are gonna do is, once we have all of our tracked changes done, then we're gonna decide if we need to move stuff around.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And then we move it around, and then we show it to you, and you go, what the heck did you?
And then there'll be a quiz.
All right. This was very helpful, Hillary, thank you.
My pleasure,
Yeah.
thank you, thanks for all your hard work on this.
Well, we want to get it right the first time.
Enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Thank you. Okay, so we feel good about that. Let's move on now to the draft language. Oh, well, we just pretty much did that, right? Because we're going to wait now. Number 2, it says draft language for human services and finance committees. We'll wait now on that based on what we talked about tonight.
Yes,
Mhm.
yep.
So why does this jump right into, I just arbitrarily put select board first? Does that sound like a good place to start?
Yep.
And Hannah and Peter did this wonderful, colorful project, so I don't know who wants to start the go-through.
I'll just name that Hannah had created the entire markup that we had reviewed last time. And so, and there were some specific sections that we had previously agreed I would propose language for. And so what's going on in this document is Hannah's red and green are still Hannah's red and green. I then put in the blue strikeouts and the purple additions that are Peter in here, and then sent those to Hannah to be double checked. And so there's, in a few relatively minor ways, maybe I would say minor with one potential exception that we'll talk about when we get to the finance section. What she did was clean up my work and make it better. There was one where there was a more substantive change that we'll talk about, and I'll just name it so it's not so mysterious, but Hannah, the thing where you had it say Human Services Fund, I'd just like to have some discussion around that particular change and why it's important. But outside of that, this, in that way that I just described, represents sort of full collaboration among the two of us.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
sort of to keep track of the changes we already discussed last time versus what's new.
Exactly,
So
that's
and-
right.
And now, Gary, do you know there's a copy of this if you want to see it?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Great, yeah, I was just trying to.
Oh, it's right there
got
on the.
two.
On the
Oh,
set.
okay, I was looking to figure out what.
I didn't want you to be left out. All
Dave
right,
got one?
so the yellow, the red and the green, we've already discussed.
Block.
That's
So
correct.
do you folks want to go through the purple and the blue with us?
Yes.
Sure.
I'll let Peter, these are really Peter's changes.
Sure, happy to do that. So, my printer color actually was getting kind of wonky, so I'm grabbing the one you handed out
Here.
tonight so I can see the purple.
I've got
better.
two. So
I got it,
Okay.
I'm good. Thank you, though. So, the first new proposed change would be at C. These are reflective of things we have talked about before, and hopefully my notes from our prior conversation are accurate. But what's going on in the first one is that this is where, if you remember from about a month ago, I had proposed marking up this paragraph C in a way that had some new language before the strikeout, and then the strikeout, and then some new language after the strikeout, and it was, everybody in the room found it confusing. But I think after we talked about it, it wasn't so much that the two thoughts I was trying to express were confusing, it was compressing them into one paragraph. And so if that is in fact where we landed, then this should cure that. Where item C, this is under the prohibitions part, so not powers and duties, this is what is telling what people can't do, in particular what the select board can't do. And so item C is meant to clarify that they can't direct orders to any employee that is supervised by the town manager. That under the town manager form of government, it's important that the select board directs the town manager directs the staff. So that's the first thought, and it's its own thought in paragraph C. And then in paragraph D, it begins with select board shall act as a body. That I readily admit is not a prohibition. I left it in with the semicolon, because all the rest of it talks about what is not appropriate for any one or two select board members to do, because the select board needs to act as a body, which means 3 or more voting for something. So that's what's going on in those 2 paragraphs. Okay?
Yep, good to me.
On paragraph 5C, section 5 appointments, paragraph C is about the select board appointing the town manager. And I missed this, honestly, in some of our earlier reviews over the last couple of years, but spotted it when I was making these changes, so this is something new. But it has the words for cause, and for cause is, has implications as a matter of HR law of...
Where are you on that?
I'm sorry, I'm in
Oh, I see.
5C on, actually, we aren't page.
Oh, I see. I was looking at...
Select board shall appoint
I
a
was
town
looking at the
manager and may
yellow.
remove the same for cause is
Yeah.
the first sentence.
Yeah.
I'm proposing that we delete the for cause because elsewhere in the document, we're proposing that there be an employment agreement between the town and the town manager when a select board appoints a town manager. The importance of that employment agreement, in addition to setting out the expectations for how the town manager will function, is that there's a basic principle of town manager form of government, that when the governing body thinks we need a new town manager, they get to say, we need a new town manager. And then the town manager has this agreement that provides protection for that person and their family with severance protection if there is a decision made by the board that it's time to make a change. For cause would suggest that as any other employee has protection, that there have to be like clearly stated reasons as opposed to just the board thinks it's necessary to make a change. That those would have to be provided or else it wouldn't be a proper termination. And I think that does run counter to the basic principles of council manager form of government, and I think it's important that we adhere to those basic principles so that there's an accountability aspect of that for the town manager to the board that is important.
Yeah.
So how would the language read?
I'm sorry?
If you take out for cause, how would the language read?
It just reads exactly like what's there except without for cause. And it begs the immediate reasonable question of, well, isn't this putting the town manager in a precarious position? And my answer to that is what I said about the agreement. That's why the agreement is so important. So if a board ever did decide to make that change, whenever a board might make a decision to make that change, the manager has protection through the agreement.
Are we skipping over the
Right.
top section?
B, there's some edits in B as
Oh,
well.
I'm sorry.
I know
Yep.
that purple
Look
is so
at that.
subtle.
I missed it. Yeah, I did skip over that. Can we finish this conversation and then I'll go back up to it?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. Yep,
Okay.
that makes sense.
Now,
Are we good?
Now we're on,
Okay. So,
no,
yeah, back up
that's
to
what
B.
I'm
Actually, it's unfortunate that Hillary.
no, we're just looking at that,
Um,
just an election.
Yeah, so the select board shall be the judge of the election and the qualifications of its members. This is in the section that speaks to the select board having the authority under certain circumstances to remove one of its own members from being a select board member. And it felt to me incorrect and inappropriate to be having the to declare the select board to be the judge of the election, since that's vested actually in the town clerk. But the rest of this is all good and necessary in terms of the judgment of the qualifications and the grounds for forfeiting.
And now can I get even more
Yep.
wishing Hillary was still here? Because we can ask her about this, because it's actually the Board of Civil Authority that
Oh,
sets.
isn't that the truth? Yes.
Yeah,
But
so
in
it's
any
not
case,
even-
it's not the select board.
No, that's right.
So I think deleting election and is
Yeah.
important,
Yeah.
just to get it right. And then the purple language that's proposed here is language that we did look at last time, where it was important to me in my review of this months ago, and so I proposed it 6 weeks ago or whenever when we were looking at the language, that we add a sentence. It seemed missing to me that the board, who has to do all this stuff in public, it lays out the reasons why somebody might be removed, and it lays out that there has to be that the person who would be removed has a right to a public hearing. it doesn't lay out in any way how that person would become aware that the other members of the board thought that they might need to be removed.
Right.
And so that's what this sentence is intended to require, is that the board take a preliminary vote to agree on what is the reason why we're going to consider a forfeiture. And what that does is it puts the member on notice whose position is at risk so that they have an opportunity to respond to that charge, if you will. I mean, to the reason that the board might use to remove them. That's why that's proposed.
Does anyone have any issues with that?
No, but I would be curious, did you happen to see if there was anything in state statute for select board?
I did not go looking for that.
Not a
So
problem.
if Hannah
I just
says
don't,
that any of this is superfluous, I'm happy to
I think that would
look at
just,
removing things that are superfluous.
yeah. If there's already protections, or where do we maybe differ from a select board person
Yep.
goes through this process?
Somebody wants to talk to us on that.
We have one comment, David.
It's me again. By implication, I just want to make clear. So essentially that means you need 3 votes to remove.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
So a 2-2 tie leaves them in place.
That's correct.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
And even a 3-2 vote, I'm sorry, a 3-1 vote or a 4-0 vote to raise the question of a potential removal. That's what this is adding into the process, is a preliminary consideration of whether something serious enough has gone on that calls to question the qualifications of a member to continue sitting as a select board member. That would be named so that then there can be a subsequent decision of whether or not to remove the person. And it offers the opportunity for the person to either offer a defense and or ask for a public hearing.
Does that person have the right to vote on their own removal?
I think that's a good question for the attorney.
Why wouldn't they, you know?
I think probably yes, while they're still a sitting member of the select board.
The question, I didn't hear it.
No, you're doing research, it's fine.
Oh, no, I just couldn't hear what he
Yeah,
said.
so he has, does the person who's at risk of being removed get to vote on the motion to remove? I mean, at that moment, they're still a sitting member of the board. It would seem like they do get to vote on that motion.
Why couldn't,
Why wouldn't they be able?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
You know how they're gonna vote.
Presumably, yes.
You can vote to elect yourself.
But we're right back to needing 3 out of the other 4 in order for there to be an action.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm sure the state has a list of reasons for removal, correct?
That's what I'm looking up.
That's
I
what
don't
we're
think
looking.
there is actually, but
Ah. Realize the rubber's the bar, but so.
I know this has come up in other towns where it's very difficult to remove a select board member who doesn't want to leave.
Yeah,
Was it
okay.
Bellows Falls or Saxon's River that had the?
C is, we discussed last time, just pointing out the highlight, that was a very long, complicated discussion about what we actually changed there, and I haven't
Yes.
actually parsed it out and put it in, so that's why it's highlighted. I just wanted to
In yellow. The
make
yellow
that
one.
clear,
No problem.
yeah.
Okay.
Going over to the next page at paragraph F, you'll stop me if I'm skipping over anything again. But there, this is where we were requiring all vacancies to be published, but not in a local newspaper anymore, since that felt like obsolete language, but still published at least 10 days before they are filled. So on the website, in other digital form, and if the town chooses to, in the newspaper, all would meet the requirements of publishing for 10 days in advance.
Yeah, there's usually an article in the paper.
Yeah. Okay. Next page. At paragraphs B and C, actually, I think we need to do a little bit more cleanup. So Hannah and I had a brief conversation just before this meeting. I would just ask the rest just to note for the record for tonight, this is where we asked for terminology from the fire chief regarding the variety of different emergency medical positions that exist within the fire department now. In the charter, there's a separate paragraph, B to establish and maintain a fire department, and C, to establish and maintain a rescue service. We think we should leave those separate, but we need to get the terminology straight and consistent in those two paragraphs. So we will do that before coming back for a final approval.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and we have it
Commission.
from the fire department.
we have, yeah, and the emergency medical providers is the right language, but there's a question of like, does that need to be in both places, or could it be
Yeah.
firefighters in B and emergency medical providers in C?
C, yeah.
And so we'll get that cleaned up for you, and it'll be part of what comes back later in the month.
I think I'm gonna go look at, because I sent the fire chief one of these sentences. I
Well,
think
and
it
you
was the
sent it-
rescue one.
You got the answer
Yeah.
from him, and you sent that to me.
Right.
And then we got mixed up with each other when we were preparing it,
Oh,
so
okay.
that's,
So you have the info you need?
we have the info we
Okay.
need, we just need to get it clear for you.
Yeah, we just didn't read far enough to realize that there were separate sections.
Exactly.
Okay.
Rescue and fire.
Right,
Because I sent him, I think,
precisely.
yeah, I sent him
And-
C.
Then there are the next two, at F and at K, it's just removing citations because it's,
And at D.
the language is the language. And at D also, thank you. All of that is just keeping consistent with our desire to not be quoting statute, or putting in an overly specific citation of statute, because that can change. At M, this is where we had a really good conversation last time. I initially proposed that we delete all of them, and we landed in a better place because I was thrown in my initial review by how focused some of the language in the existing charter is about donations of property. But in fact, there's also really important language to keep in here about grants and other donations. And so, the town relies a lot on granted funds from mostly other governmental sources, some private sources. And so the changes that are before you here are intended to keep the good and useful grant and donation language, but take out the reference to property, real and personal, and to there's language at the end about in-kind services and paying all necessary expenses and stuff that felt superfluous, especially given that we want the focus of this paragraph to be on grants. So there's usually an application and an approval and a check, and we want to keep it simple. At R, the change there is simply meant to make it consistent with S. So one is, R is about the purchasing procedures for the town. S is about the personnel rules for the town. And there was inconsistent language between those two in a way that didn't understand why it was presented differently. So we've made it consistent now to adopt procedures for all purchases and sales, and to adopt personnel rules for town employees, and to delete the references to state statute.
And then you.
X,
You.
sorry? You. Well, you has
Oh, it's green.
language
Green.
that was
Sorry.
already in
Sorry.
Hannah's prior draft. No problem. At X, we're proposing the elimination of the entire, we talked about this last time, it's obsolete now. BCTV exists and exists as an independent entity that at one time was more connected to the town, and so X doesn't pertain any longer. And there was also some language in X that was suggestive of a very, very long ago former authority that the town had to regulate cable television, which since the 1980s municipalities have been prohibited from regulating cable television. So it's just, anyway, X is out. Y, I got a little too happy with the deletions because we still need X. We still need that to be the new paragraph X. So that's missing from this draft. But the change here is to get rid of all that language that's specific mainly to various types of building trades and regulations that the town doesn't regulate any longer, but at one time did in the past. and to be non-specific and broad instead with promote and safeguard the public health, safety, comfort, and general welfare by the adoption of ordinances and regulations. Important language for all the different ways in which the select board is able to act to do those things, to protect public health, safety, comfort, and general welfare, without all of the specific references that are proposed to be deleted.
And this is one I want to ask Hillary, because she recommended this, but she said there was one thing, I'm going to go back and look, because she was saying the same thing, that this isn't, the town doesn't do any of this stuff.
That's right.
But there was one little thing I thought she said they did do.
Was it the fire?
To the degree that we do still do any of what's in the blue strikeout, I would defer to Hannah on this, but I believe that the language that we have left in, we're not deleting the
Right.
whole thing.
Right.
We're leaving in the very general language of promoting health, safety, and welfare, so I think we're covered.
Yeah.
So on this, just
Mhm.
because it is what's struck out or currently in the charter,
Yep.
considered being struck out, is there any reason to even clarify, like a little bit of words to clarify that these are kind of like, I get that it is in there, public health, safety, comfort, general welfare, but like some of they are like, is there a term, or because the ordinances and regulations, that's anything,
Right.
and are these just examples anyway? And so no reason to shortchange a list by giving examples, because ordinances and regulations is so broad anyway, even in its current form. But it just, I'm cautious about not maybe having a small clarifier. I get that like ordinances and regulations can happen at any point via the select board.
Yep.
I'm just cautious that this list was listed for a reason. And is there a qualifier we might be missing?
So, my understanding from talking to some people involved previously was that this list was mostly just for convenience. There was this whole section was this sort of idea of like compiling everything that already existed
Yeah.
into like one master list for the convenience of the select board. I don't think that it does need to be specified, because unless there is some preemption on the state or federal level, we should have the authority to
do these
do
things.
regulations and ordinances or whatever we want.
And under statute, we can. In fact, there is statute that sets forth the ways in which municipalities can regulate.
And
these
most of
activities.
these are in the regulations that planning sets out and the DRB enforces. A lot of these.
Some of them do, but like building codes, building inspectors, I mean, there's a lot of stuff
Well,
here that relates
I
to when
didn't
the
say
town
all of
actually
them.
had a
I
code
said-
enforcement function.
I
We don't do any of that.
Right.
I said, but some of these are.
Yes,
the
but you have
minimum
your own ordinances
requirements,
that provide the authority for that. DRB does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if it seems like if it was a list of convenience, it served a time, and it current behavior and state statute allow for this wider,
Yes.
non-listed, then, yeah, I
Cool.
am totally fine with
Thank you.
losing a whole page out of the charter with that list.
Yeah. Great.
Because it was Hillary too that started like, we don't need to put any of this stuff in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's,
We're not taking away any authority to
No,
do regulations or ordinances, we're just taking out this oddly specific list.
That's exactly right.
Yes.
yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
the
I like
list
that
is.
oddly
Better
specific.
said.
Oddly
Yeah.
specific.
Thank you. And that's it for the select board section. I'll pause before we move on into the town manager section.
Just mostly for my own, but we're going to have to renumber, so Z
yeah.
will become Y.
Yep.
And so on and so forth.
Yes, and actually, there is one other thing. Hannah and I also spoke about this, and we didn't incorporate it into this draft, but it will be in the next one. There'll be a blanket statement. No, I shouldn't say blanket. There'll be a statement that she'll insert into the appropriate spot of the select board section here, or select board article, that will name that the select board automatically serves as the liquor commissioners, water and sewer commissioners, and whatever other types of automatic authority like that they carry.
Yeah,
That'll be added by the next time we see the draft.
that's good.
Because it's already assumed that they take the role, or somebody else?
Because it is our standard practice, and they recently did, so we used to do a dance in select board meetings where they would close up a part of the meeting as the select board and open up as something else, and then they would close up as the something else and go back to being the select board. In order to avoid that, they've recently adopted a policy that declares the select board is, for Brattleboro's purposes, the this, the that, the something else. And so we want to take that language that reflects not only current practice, but what has been the long-standing, decades-long practice, and put it in the charter.
Because it's like
Perfect.
liquor commissioners, water sewer commissioners, and now I
Cannabis.
think cannabis something.
And there may be something else.
And everything they're doing is getting handled at select board meetings, so it's just sort of taking out that formality of,
We're convening as liquor commissioners,
Right.
then you do
Yeah.
the work, then you go, okay, we're gonna adjourn as liquor commission. I mean, we used to have to go through that for
so
every.
we'll probably just call from whatever it was that they
In that policy.
adopted or motioned, or however they did that,
Yeah.
and use that.
Good.
So much
Thumbs up.
better.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, moving to what will be new Article 4. It's the town manager article. There's proposed new Section 1, that the select board has the sole authority to appoint a town manager. Section 2, the employment agreement piece that requires that there be an employment agreement, a written agreement with the town manager, establishing the town manager's terms of employment, and additional language there, but basically that's what we've already talked about. That it sets out the terms of employment and the severance compensation in the event of termination. Section 3 makes clear that the town manager shall abide by any action of the select board that directs or prohibits action by the town manager on any matter of town business, except as may be explicitly prohibited by law or by this charter. And it's missing a period. The purpose of this is to be the counterbalance to the piece that says that the select board can't, that language in the prohibitions, the select board has to direct action by the town manager as a body and can't direct staff, because that's the town manager's responsibility, but to make clear that there is a counterbalance in terms of the checks and balances of the authority at the leadership of town government, that when the select board acts as a body and provides direction to the town manager must abide by that direction. And then Section 4 just takes on a new title because it had been previously the beginning of Article 4. So I just added the word authority, since this speaks to the authority of the town manager. There were some changes there at the beginning that had already been made by Hannah. I'm proposing deletion, or we are proposing this evening, deletion of B, because it's to ensure the performance of all duties not conferred by law or by this charter on the select board except where prohibited by law. So that you're required to do all the things that the law tells you to do except when the law tells you you can't. Felt like really ridiculous language and unnecessary.
It's hard to understand.
Yeah, exactly. And then just a picky one, but we had a brief conversation about this the last time. Weirdly, unlike any of the other places where there's a tie to some other authority, someone else's authority, so like an entity having the same authority as something else, that happens a few other places in the charter. Under paragraph 4E, the word now appears there, and it just seems odd. Instead of saying to perform all the duties conferred by law upon the road commissioner, to say now conferred by law upon the road commissioner just didn't make sense, so we're deleting now. And that's it for that section. All right, that article. And then moving on to what would now be Article 5 of the Charter, the finances section. Just to put this in context, because there's some more substantial changes here than in the other two areas. This one really had only previously spoken to capital. Even though it was called finances, it really dealt only with, there was a little bit of other revenue language that stays, but mostly it was about capital expenditures of the town. We've had prior discussion that it's important to be really clear about some of the other financial authority and practices of the town. And so this is attempting to cover that, and in the ways that we discussed last time, there was language I brought forward on all of these different pieces. We had good long discussions about it. There was there's a bit of modification. Honestly, I would have to go back to my notes to be able to call out what's a little different in front of you now, except that it to the best of my ability, does reflect where we landed, to the degree that on a couple of these we landed in a slightly different place than what I initially proposed. But to summarize, there would be a 4-part section 1 called budget, where it lays out the responsibilities of different officials in the budget process. There is a new one that we talked about last time that was not in front of you before, which is D. So just to refresh, it has the town manager's responsibility to bring the budget, the proposed budget and related documents forward by December 1st to the select board. And then the select board's job to review those in public and with the public, and by not later than February 1st, making a recommendation for a general fund budget to send to town meeting. And then item C, town meeting's obligation to either adopt what's recommended by the select board, adopt it with amendments, or reject it and return it to the select board for further consideration. Those 3 things were all in front of you last time and are more or less the same, but with a little tweaking. D, we only talked about conceptually last time, and there's now language. I'll just read it through for those who are listening. If the budget is amended at the town meeting, each such amendment shall be in a specific amount and for a specifically stated purpose. The aggregate financial impact of all such amendments shall be binding. The individual amounts and specifically stated purposes shall be advisory only. In the next annual town report, the select board shall provide a written explanation of its action regarding each individual amendment. The purpose of this is to help us as a community do a better job of having budget amendments occur in an orderly manner that actually carry meaning and can be implemented, because we've had a lot of variation over the years. Sometimes there have been budget amendments that have been quite clear in terms of the intent of the representative town meeting body, but at other times there's actually been changes made to the budget that explicitly didn't have any intent attached to them, except to reduce the cost of town government. You know, let's cut $100,000 out of the budget, but not with any kind of explanation for what the body thinks is necessary to cut. And so this is imposing on town meeting the responsibility that if you're going to make changes to the select board's proposed budget, it is responsible and useful to be specific about the amount of the change and the intent of the change. But for each individual thing, unless we were to create a line item veto, which we're not recommending, and I think would be a mistake, each individual one is advisory. It's not binding on the select board. But we don't want to take away the authority that town meeting already has to make the decision over the entire amount of the budget. And so that's why there's this language that says that the aggregate financial impact of all such amendments shall be binding. The individual amounts and specifically stated purposes shall be advisory only.
So it could be an addition or a
deletion.
reduction.
That's correct.
Okay.
Either way, it's a change to the budget, an amendment to the budget in either direction.
So the total amount, let's say Kate says we're going to take $10,000 from, I don't know, the fire department. And I say we're going to add $12,000 to something.
The library.
I don't know what. The library, okay. Then the budget would increase by $2,000.
Mm-hmm. And both specific recommendations would be passed on to the select board for consideration. And the requirement of the select board to report back in writing is meant to be a check and balance. So we're requiring something more of town meeting to be more explicit in making amendments, and equally requiring something more of the select board to report back to the community. Either they followed the advice given to them by town meeting, or they decided not to because whatever reason they decided not to.
Joy, did you have something?
No, I think that was an example, yes, that would help clarify that. I guess I would, really love to make sure that there's not a thing a consequence that we don't understand in this. I think, yes, it is in general, it moves well. I like where periods are, they're complete statements, as opposed to maybe like comma, however, right? Or but, making sure like that. So but for me, I will, there's just something that makes me hold back a full-throated,
Sure.
And
y'all are seeing it for the first time tonight. Unlike almost everything else we're talking about in this part of the meeting, this is the first time you're seeing this. So it's fair also just to give it some more thought and have us have some more discussion later in the month around it.
And one thing that I like about it is we're not fundamentally doing anything differently it's not imposing a new thing. You know what I mean? It's not imposing a line item veto.
Correct.
We're still doing what we're allowed to do anyway. It's just formalizing it.
And requiring in both cases some accountability by being more detailed. So right now, the select board can choose not to follow the advice of town meeting, and there's no provision anywhere in any of our governing documents that requires the select board to say boo about it.
Yeah.
And so this requires, if the select board receives a recommendation from town meeting and chooses to implement it, they say, we did it. We were asked to do X and we did it. Or chooses not to implement it, then we chose not to implement it because, and they offer an explanation. That'll be useful, I think, just for our civic life in town. And in order for them to be able to fulfill that responsibility, it's only fair to expect that town meeting is actually going to issue clear and actionable recommendations.
That's what I was thinking was in this, maybe say this last March where RTM rejected the budget and there was a feedback that there wasn't a clear action to take. It was just a reject. So in that scenario, that can still happen given the words in these A through D.
Yes.
However, if a D was enacted in, obviously I'm merging all these images, but there is a potential for a clear amendment that would have consequences.
So we would have to change the wording some, and we should think about how we might do that, because I don't think it's as simple as just saying amended or rejected, because then some of the rest of the paragraph doesn't work as well with the rejected part. But there might need to be, maybe there's like a D1 and a D2, so that this same desire for specificity and accountability can be set forth for a rejection vote, as we already are intending for an amendment vote.
Unless it just fits in the gap, that it's just rejected, so they have to go back and do it.
And that's how it would be as of right now.
Yeah, because I'll let David go and then I have to say.
So I'm just curious, and so in Maya's example, where you had a $12,000 increase and a $10,000 decrease, or maybe is that what I meant? But are you saying then that the 2,000 net is binding?
Yes.
But the individual scenarios are not binding?
That's correct.
So the town needs to then spend the $2,000?
The town would be, the budget would be increased by $2,000. The select board still has the authority in the future that it has had in the past to spend what it spends. They have the authority to decide something, they never spend the exact dollars, exact to the dollar of what gets approved at town meeting. It's always either under or over for reasons.
So the binding wording is really only a technicality.
It is binding upon the so for instance, for purposes of tax bills, we're using an example that's only a $2,000 difference because it's
Right.
easier for us to
Right.
understand it. But presumably there would be a greater impact from actions actually taken at the meeting.
Mhm.
And that, what we're saying is, just like it has been in the past, in the future, the total number would still be determined by town meeting. And it would be the obligation of select board to go forth and carry that as the approved budget.
Okay, so-
But then the implementation of the approved budget is the select board's business, and
So the tax
they don't
rate
do
would be-
everything line item
Right.
perfect.
So in our example, the tax rate would include the allocation of the $2,000.
That's
Yes.
correct.
Whether or not the town spent it.
Right.
That's correct.
Yes.
Exactly
It's the
right.
same thing we do now at town meeting.
That's right.
It's just us
And I think
saying,
that came up in one of the votes at the end of the RTM meeting.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing, it's just us being, when the people get up and say, I want $70,000 added to this thing, we all go like, yeah, we want 70,000 added to this thing. The 70,000 is added to the thing, is added to the budget, whether it goes to the thing or not.
That's right.
And all we're
Right,
asking
right.
is that the select board says, yes, we added it to the thing, or we didn't add it to the thing.
Have a word from David Levy.
Okay, we'll get David, then we'll have Andy.
David Lynn,
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, David Lumlock, Finance Committee, District 9. Three things. Number one, I appreciate this language in terms of helping, again, make explicit that the town meeting does not have line item veto power. I also very much appreciate the requirement that the select board come back and report its reasonings for not following what town meeting calls for. As to the reasons for rejection, basing this on the March experience, which is my only experience and maybe the only one anyone here has had, people indicated unhappiness on a variety of counts. I don't know that it would have been practical to vote each of those objections. I think there was enough discussion at town meeting to give the select board some guidance. And as they went through their budget revision process, there were public meetings of the select board where they could get more specific information. And then I think the select board needs to take responsibility for doing the best they can to take town meetings' views as a whole into account. So I don't think it's really feasible to specify in a motion the basis for rejection.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I actually agree with that. I mean, I think when it's such a dramatic thing about when you're rejecting a whole budget, if the select board doesn't take anything away from all the discussion that goes on, then there's no motion that we can make that's gonna make them understand it.
Yeah, and I think David's point about how complicated it was this year, we had
Yeah.
real life experience, and the majority voted to reject the budget, but not every person who voted in that majority had the same reasons for rejecting the
Right.
budget. I think that's
Yeah.
compelling,
I think
and
it
so
is.
we ought to leave this language the way it is.
That's what I
And
think so.
thankfully, that's going to be a really rare
Yeah.
occurrence.
Yeah.
We hope.
Certainly expect.
Andy,
Yeah, thank you. Andy Davis, District 9. I came in just the right time for my own personal interest. I spent a chunk of time in the last couple of weeks looking at online of all old budgets and actual versus budgeted, and on the Human Services Committee. And it seemed like it's a fairly new thing that town meeting got really into this idea of raising and lowering and setting rates and everything. So if you go back 5 or 6 years, the number that the select boards put forward was usually the number that was discussed. There might have been some questions about the process or a particular grant, but it was usually a deference by RTM for the select board selecting an amount of money that fit into their overall budget. So I'm wondering if this section D here applies to the human service, amending the human service budget. So if you read it with that in mind, if the budget is amended at town meeting, each such amendment shall be at a specific amount. Okay, so we're going to raise it by $80,000. And for a specifically stated purpose. We don't think we're funding our human services sufficiently. The aggregate financial impact will be added, so you add that $80,000, and that's the new budget number binding. The individual amounts shall be advisory only. In the next town report, the select board could say, that was a really nice gesture, but we really don't have $80,000. And the reason I'm playing this scenario is that a lot of people, I think, are still confusing RTM as the legislature. The select board has all recorded votes, all of their meetings are public. If you want to see somebody on the select board that's spending too much money, you could vote against them in the privacy of the Australian ballot. We already have so many of the things that people are saying we don't have. And what happened with the frustration of the budget with regard to, especially human services was one of the hot button issues. People on the select board who were incumbents were voted out and RTM voted the budget down. So I keep going back to the question, is my interpretation of your proposal D here, would that apply to amending the human service budget?
I think Hannah wants to.
I would ask that you save that question until we get to the human service section because
Yes.
it is actually separate.
Yes. And separate on purpose. There's a whole separate part
In
of,
your rewriting of the town charter, but not the way it is now.
well,
Because when I asked that question of the town attorney the last time I was here,
yes.
there didn't seem to be any basis in state law for keeping it separate.
There isn't a requirement that it be separate. There has been a longstanding practice that it be separate, and its own separate article. So select boards since before 2015 have, I'd say always, since at least 2015, it was always the case that select boards, in creating the warning for representative town meeting, had a separate article on regarding
Right.
the human services piece.
And it's binding.
And it's binding because it's a separate article. So there was an intentionality around taking that sliver of the budget
Yeah.
with its own separate back process of vetting that goes on and saying that decision's going to get actually made by town meeting. The rest of the specific decisions get made by the select board, but the global decision gets made by town meeting.
And you're planning to discuss that later tonight?
We're going to discuss later how we're trying to treat that phenomenon in the updated language to be more explicitly clear about that distinction.
Good, thank you.
And that's coming
Thank you.
up. That's coming up next. So
Thank you.
So I just think if I'm playing out D in the last RTM,
Yep.
again, different models, but I feel like I could see a scenario where maybe without an actual amendment with a specific amount and a stated purpose, that the select board might feel like they were not given direction. So, and maybe, and they aren't, because they aren't, but like the discussion, the debate happens, to your point. The true scenario, the whole budget was rejected, and people spoke to different parts of why they were upset with the budget. And then a select board could come away and say, I didn't hear anything. All I know is the budget was rejected.
Yep.
And so that's like maybe not a problem per se, and then the process happens for creating a new budget.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I'm wrestling with what we actually went through with language to actually attempt to work with it or respond to that experience. And I'm not
do you think that the
settled
fact-
yet.
Like, we rejected the budget. There was tons of discussion. We rejected the budget. The select board did a new one, and they came back to us and they said, "Hey, everybody, based on what we didn't hear or what we did hear, here's the budget we're bringing forward." So to me, they're almost answering the rejection by what they're bringing forward. And maybe they're bringing it forward. They're saying, "Well, we didn't know what you guys wanted, so we guessed." I mean, even that's an action of telling us why they did what they did. I mean, because are you trying to get to, in a budget rejection, it has to be more specific, or?
Maybe
I
that
don't think-
even, I I'm wrestling because like it's true that the select board can, if the value is raised or lowered, can do whatever they want because the select board is in charge of the budget, the actual spending,
The implementation.
Yes, and so but that somehow the formality of an amendment of vote here, this is what X amount of people stand behind, is the thing that needs to be listened to, versus the ability just to be together and say, didn't you hear?
Okay. Oh, I see. So what you're getting at is maybe we don't need to be specific. Is that what you're saying?
But
Even
there
for an amendment.
does.
You're
There
saying
does
even
need to
for
be
an amendment.
specificity, so I'm definitely struggling
For
with
a rejection?
Are you talking
for an upper or downer, but that,
Well,
but I can't articulate what is making me uncomfortable that I'm trying, and again, it is the first read, but I'm trying, the very real experience of like, but we were together in a room and debated, and I heard something, but it wasn't a formal vote.
Now, do you like the idea of a formal vote or not like the idea of a formal vote?
I don't know.
Yeah, because I hear what you're saying. I don't like the formal vote on a rejection because it's too big. Like this
everybody
year,
had their own
reasons for
reasons for
rejection.
rejecting it. And
yeah,
I think that, yeah, maybe we heard from one select board member that they didn't hear a good enough reason. But I've talked to other new select board members, because we rejected most of the select board that was up for vote, that they knew exactly what we were rejecting it for.
yeah. But I think there are two different things here too, Joy. It's like the rejection of the entire budget, and it's we want to add 70,000 for
Yeah.
X, or we want to take out 70,000 from this thing. So there are two different things, and I think
Yeah.
to me, getting specific on the rejection and having everybody agree on why we're rejecting it is
Impossible.
impossible.
Yeah.
But I think if it's we've seen people get up and say, I want to add $70,000 to the global blah, 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 blah,
Fund.
whatever fund. And everybody votes yes or no. So that's
Yeah.
that seems doable to me.
Yeah.
There were people that got up at the last town meeting and just got up and said, we want to cut 500,000, and then sat down and we didn't know what the heck we were cutting the 500,000
Right.
for. So I think
And this would preclude that.
That's right. That would
This would
fix
create
that.
an obligation of town meeting to be specific about why
Right.
there
Does that
would be
help
a cut
That
of 500,000.
example helps,
Mhm.
because yes, like, but, and I guess to say that it's non-binding of where it is, so they could just say 500,000 from parks, and then that's clearly a placeholder for something else that they want, but they are being technically specific.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is like how it's probably gonna play out, right?
Yeah.
Could, yeah.
But there are a couple of stopgaps there, which is that everyone else at town meeting has to agree.
Fair.
Right.
And this is the big reason why this committee is proposing open town meeting instead of Australian ballot,
Exactly.
so that you can amend the budget
Yes.
and, make these changes. And so I think having some accountability from both sides, like Peter's saying, is really valuable, but just voting yes or no on the budget is a separate issue. Like this is a hopefully will streamline and make the meeting more efficient and accomplish a lot of the other goals we wanted to, while preserving that ability to make these amendments. But I think that rejection is a lot more complicated and hopefully a lot more rare.
Yeah. And I totally agree. I think it's important, the distinction that you just made between the value of being able to make these amendments in an open town meeting versus simply rejecting, which is something that could be done by Australian ballot, but the amendment can't be done by Australian ballot. So I really like how you framed that we as a group feel that there's important value to having a town meeting, being in a room together, being able to amend. And so reflecting that in here with some additional responsibility for having that authority feels good and right, but like good governance, improving the governance of the town.
And you avoid a rejection if we all work together.
Hopefully.
We can
Yes.
avoid a rejection if we can find a way forward together. That's true.
Peace and love.
Yeah.
So we can think
Yep.
about, I mean, we're not gonna decide this tonight, so we can ruminate.
Yeah, I am
Yeah.
feeling less concerned, but I will continue to dwell.
Also, I'm happy to chat with you
Yeah.
separately as you wrestle some more with this.
Yeah.
If you want to kick it around some more,
Fair.
you know, we're, two of us can do that without being here.
Yeah, and what I like about D is it gives both entities some responsibility, but it doesn't force anybody to do anything that they aren't doing now.
And it's not changing either party's
The
authority.
authority
No, that's
remains
right,
the
that's what I
same.
mean. The authority
Exactly.
remains the
Yeah.
same, is just making it, and it's giving, you know, for the people on the select board, we're giving them, we're obligating town meeting to give them the information on why we want that $75,000 added, and then
Yep.
it gives the select board the obligation to tell why they didn't add it or why
Or
they
did.
did.
Yep, exactly.
Question on a different letter in the same section. I wanted to clarify if A, the timetable of the 5 or longer, 25-year or
Yeah.
longer currently in the charter?
No.
Added.
No.
Added.
No.
None of this, what's interesting, none of this stuff was in the charter.
Is
Right.
it
There was nothing-
behavior though?
Yes.
It's
So the D reflects a desire to be clearer and have, you know, create some affirmative responsibilities for something that has been, at least at some times in Brattleboro's history, the expectation, but was not clearly written down. C certainly reflects just what already exists.
A and B do too.
B reflects just what already exists. A is the one that includes something new, and I'll be really candid about why. This is the responsibility of the manager to bring something forward late in the fall is something that already exists. And so December 1st is a somewhat arbitrary, but not really totally arbitrary date. Typically, it's been more around November 1st, but there needed to be a deadline if we were going to create some sort of clear requirements here. And so December 1st, we could talk about it if you want to, but anyway, that's why that's there. The other three things, I think it's just fair and proper that I admit transparently a very strong professional opinion I have from my own experience, 38 years in municipal management and 22 of those as a town manager, of the importance of these long-term planning documents in communities making financial decisions. And this has been standard practice for the last decade in town. At different times, the town has followed these practices, and at different times it has not. And in the last couple of years, the town has not. And some of us felt that was really problematic for the overall governance of the town. And so as we're dealing with the document that sets forth the requirements and parameters of governance of the town, this is an item, even though it's not in the existing charter, that felt so significant and important that, to me at least, that I wrote this language so that the thing that was standard for all time of the town manager being responsible to bring forward a budget had with it the companion responsibility of bringing forward these planning documents.
And when Peter and I first sat down a long time ago, when we went through the select board and town manager stuff, that's when it was like, wait, there's nothing in here about even the select board and town manager are involved in the budget process. So then we were talking about it even more, so we're not making up something new.
It's flushed out from your experience.
Yes, and
Exactly.
and obviously I was on the select board when Peter was town manager, so it's my experience that we've had these plans.
Yes.
So it's standard, it's been past practice in this town.
And, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's also, I think, important that the Finance Committee this year recommended these things, both in its first report and in its second report.
And we voted on something in other business the first RTM, Paula
Yes.
Melton got up.
That's right.
And actually had another business thing asking for this.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's not like we're on our own personal crusades on this and
That's
just
right.
thought of this. This is something that has been past practice in the town that's not been written down, because I think we all assume, well, it's past practice, everyone's gonna do it. You know what I mean? So.
But now it would be required
Yeah,
of these officials that they do these things
Yeah.
on this calendar.
yeah.
Yeah.
David?
So it would be the role then of the moderator to make sure that it's defined for the town meeting, the reason behind the request for the denial.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Ready to move on?
Yep.
So now we're moving into a section about the Finance Committee and then a section about the Human Services Fund. And in both cases, there's a explanatory note highlighted because we've had a lot of conversation in the last couple of months around these two bodies. And part of where we're landing needs to be in a different part. The stuff about how people get elected, how vacancies get filled, what is the authority of the entity, those things need to be set forth in a different part of the charter. And so Hannah is going to prepare that language, and we're going to review that language, and it's not going to be right here. What's right here is the part that pertains to the financial process of the town. And so the Finance Committee, actually this piece, as I think about what I just said, there's probably something for you to wrestle with, Hannah, and to decide how you want to recommend to the rest of us. This actually, on the Finance Committee piece, as distinct from the Human Services piece, is kind of the language that might be purpose and authority kind of language as opposed to financial process language. So I think I'm content, in fact, actually would prefer, because of that, that we leave that for you to wrestle with and we deal with that the next time or sometime soon, but not go too much more into Finance Committee for right now. Moving into Human Services, I'm going to describe a general purpose and then ask Hannah to describe the specifics, because I wrote most of this. Hannah has tweaked some, and most particularly has inserted the word fund. And so I think it's important that we hear from Hannah around the designation of a Human Services Fund and what's intended by that and how it's going to work with this. But the A, B, and C of this Section 3 on Human Services is intended to reflect what we discussed at great length in our last meeting, when David came forward and presented to us thoughts from the Human Services Committee, and then we wrestled with, how would this work so that we avoid the thing that we've been doing these last few years that everybody universally hates, I think. Yeah. Pretty close. 90% plus, I think, of all of us who have participated in any of it really hate this thing where it's confusing and contentious to be in one town meeting, both making decisions about this year's human services spending and setting a target for next year's, especially given that the target we're setting for next year's is many months ahead of when any other financial targets for next year are being set. Yeah. And so it feels out of sync, and it feels like it's unnecessarily contentious. Like we set this thing up to have long, hard conversations that aren't necessary or useful if we can set up a more efficient process. And that more efficient process, we believe, can be accomplished so long as the Human Services Committee does its work after town meeting instead of before town meeting. And so that's what this describes, is that there's a decision made by town meeting about how much funding to do this. So the select board brings forward the proposal, and like everything else in the budget, the town meeting has discussion around the proposal that has come from select board. What will differ in town meeting in the future, if we do this, what would differ in town meeting in the future from the past is there wouldn't be any discussion at town meeting about this organization or that organization. It would just be the amount of the funding. And then when that decision has been made, the next step is Human Services Committee that's been elected at the March elections under our new proposal goes to work on asking for proposals, or applications, and doing all its vetting work. Everything that has traditionally gone on between September and December would instead go on between April and June or July. By June or July, by July, we're into the new fiscal year. So the Human Services Committee comes forward, as it always has, with the results of its work to make a recommendation about the distribution of the funds. So there's an amount that has been established by the action of town meeting, and then the process that the Human Services Committee goes through for the distribution of that total amount. And then that would go, instead of to town meeting as it has in the past, under the way this is set up, it would go to, because it would otherwise require a special town meeting to be held in the summer. So instead, that goes back to the Select Board. The recommendation of the Human Services Committee goes to the Select Board, which then acts upon what it has received in the same manner as it does the other financial business that is the business of the Select Board, where they are going to be the ones who actually authorize the distribution to occur, and to the degree that their authorization of a distribution is anything different from what was recommended by the Human Services Committee, the Select Board, again, consistent with what we would be setting up in Section 1 for the overall budget, the Select Board would have a responsibility to report out to the community why they did it differently than what was recommended. That's what's going on in these 3 paragraphs, A, B, and C. Hannah, it would be great if you could enlighten us around Human Services Fund.
Yeah, so I, again, just sort of culled this from what they do in Essex, which that we found that there were some things that we liked about that and some things that we didn't. I felt like structuring it this way would make it clear that those funds are only for human services.
Yeah.
And that the Select Board couldn't say, well, we're just not going to fund any of this human services stuff and spend this on, you know, something completely different. Like, to make sure it's a separate pot of money.
Yep.
And it just, I also just sort of felt like it made this whole section like just easier to follow in a way. Like, okay, like you're voting to put this much in the Human Services Fund,
right?
And then, you know, that's the money that they have to work with for the year, and so on and so forth.
That's helpful. So there's a reason why it's its own separate thing called out in this part of the charter, because it is.
I mean, obviously we don't have a finance director right now, but I haven't talked to like the town treasurer or anyone to make sure that this works for them. But
yeah,
I felt like it was important to make it clear that if the voters are saying we want to put this much money towards human services, that money is only to be used for human services.
Right. Yeah, I think that's actually really helpful, and it runs parallel to the capital improvement fund. So in the capital, there's a transfer each year from the general fund budget to the capital fund, and that's set forth in the budget. The town meeting has authority over the general fund budget, but because there's a transfer from the general fund to the capital fund for those capital improvements and purchases, there is an action taken at town meeting that relates to that transfer. And so I like that this would run in parallel to that. It would have a little extra separateness attached to it, as it always has, because there would be, there's always been this separate item on town meeting warnings, so that there's a binding action taken. I like that it maintains that. We're not changing anything about that. That town meeting would be able to have its binding vote over the one big number, but then that one big number would act as a transfer to a fund, and the Select Board has the responsibility to implement the fund actions just as they do with the capital fund. So I think there's a parallel aspect of that is useful in the creation of this new system.
Question. In B, the last line, or the last 2 lines, regarding a specific allocation of funding to individual organizations not to exceed the amount determined at annual town meeting.
Correct.
Is that correct phrasing?
Yes. Well,
because wouldn't it be budget, or approved budget. I'm just cautious about that determined at the annual town. I
No,
just wanna make
because
sure
in,
that-
in A, we're actually having the annual amount to be allocated to the Human Services Fund shall be determined by vote at the annual town meeting. So that's the piece that we would
Okay.
now be memorializing in the charter, this two financial actions every year,
Okay.
the overall budget and separately the Human Services amount.
Okay.
So then that Human Services amount, as a binding action of town meeting, would be the transfer to the fund
Okay.
and the allocation of the money in that exact amount, or something less if the committee decided to recommend something less, but they couldn't recommend something more because that's the total amount that would be available for that,
Yeah.
for the expenditure that year. So the committee would do its work and presumably most of the time would recommend a tally that adds up to exactly what town meeting had authorized. But it could, the way this is worded, be something less. It could never be something more.
And
then
then-
it goes to select board to act on.
To act on, and following C, let's say distribution from the select board is lower than annual town meeting approves, and they write the report, that fund now holds a balance.
It does.
And
That's a good point.
that would live in a balance that can't be touched for anything else.
That's a good question.
And so we might need to write some language that would address that potentiality and make sure that the following year's town meeting dealt with that. I don't know what that language off the top of my head would be,
Yeah.
but that's a good point,
Yeah.
that we don't want there to be this
Thing that can grow somehow. I
this
mean, on its own.
ambiguous thing that would just sit there and
Yeah.
not have a means by which
To go back to the general
properly.
Yeah.
Maybe it would just fall back to fund balance.
What's what I'm saying? Wouldn't it just go into the unassigned fund balance like anything else would?
But what are the implications of that? How long would it stay there for a year, for 2 years,
Well,
and then go
fund
back?
balance can only be authorized, the use of fund balance can only be authorized by town meeting as
Right.
well. So the cleanest thing, I think that's a great point, Kate, that it would be clean to have, instead of set up a complex process we might imagine, even if it was a great complex process, it would still be an additional layer that might be hard for like folks to grapple with, and we might not think of all the things we should think about. But if it's simply, if less than the full amount authorized was ever spent in a given year, if the balance at the end of that fiscal year went back into the unassigned fund balance, that feels both proper and like it's a safeguard, because to the degree that we want to make sure this is written in a way where town meeting still has its authority over this particular piece, it still would, because the falling into the fund balance would be something else that is something the select board can't act on without town meeting approval.
And I worry it's a little in the weeds to say those words. However, because I can't think of another place that
Yeah, no.
talks about things in the weeds in that way, but there's also not a lot of funds talked about
Sure.
in the charter. So
Exactly.
I agree with you.
I think it's a great catch,
Yeah.
and I like Kate's solution
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah.
It also would be good, I think, since this is coming up as a fresh flag, if it's okay with the rest of the group, that we just kind of ruminate on it and wrestle with it a little
Yeah.
bit and come back with something.
Yeah.
But I think we might very likely come back with
Yeah.
what Kate suggested because of its simplicity.
Yeah, and I think, because David, there have been a couple, or at least one year, you folks didn't spend it all, or my misread. And I mean, it just went, I'm assuming,
In
but
that,
didn't
in that
spend.
case, it went back to fund balance because it was
Right.
part of the general fund.
Right.
Yeah.
And this would be the same.
Yeah.
So I think, but I do think it has to be written in there. Oh.
Yeah.
Right. Computing Davids. Mr. Levenbach.
Other David, thank you. I like the way this is going. This does address the concern that we expressed a couple weeks ago. But since transfer has to be approved by town meeting in the budget article, that means human services would have to come before the general fund, correct, in the warnings?
Doesn't it now?
No.
Yeah.
It doesn't?
Yes. Yeah, it does. Sometimes the setting of the target for the following year has come later in the meeting, but
Gotcha.
the action on this year's recommendations always is before the budget item because it
Okay.
has to be in order for the budget item to be complete.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I defer to the other David.
My turn. So in the scenario where the Human Services Committee did not, because we were able to go up to a certain amount, and
Yes.
so we did not go up to the amount. This committee itself is then making the decision not to allocate those funds.
Right.
So, but in the case where what you're saying is that the select board would then have the option by itself to say, okay, you, the Human Services Committee, allocated all the funds. We, the select board, are saying no. So then that difference then is held aside with a quote-unquote explanation as to why.
Yes.
They being the board cannot then bring that money back into the budget to be spent elsewhere?
That's correct. Based on Joy flagging this thing that we had not yet covered, and if we do it the way that Kate suggested, the select board wouldn't have authority to do anything with that delta other than spend it on human services differently than you had recommended. They're going to have that authority anyway, and then the responsibility to be accountable for the decision that they made. But let's say in the most extreme case, they decided not to distribute any of the funds. They wouldn't be able to divert any of those funds to any other purpose. Those funds at the end of the fiscal year would fall back into the fund balance, and the fund balance is under the purview of town meeting, not select board.
Andy.
Yeah, I hear, I'm really following this, and I admire your work trying to simplify it, rationalize it. I think there's a political reality that might be getting glossed over here. For one thing, when I reviewed these budgets, and I know inflation and cost of living is a factor, but these budgets have gone from under $200,000 to over $400,000. And the political question I ask is some of what's fueling the passion for Australian ballot is to find a brake pedal. And this way of doing it, I think, sort of in my first pass through listening to it, ignores that political reality. Because in a sense, what you're doing is saying, how much money are we going to put in a checkbook for a group of people that are not going to come back before the voters? And that's part of what's fueling this passion for the Australian ballot. Because we want to just say, that's too much money in human services, I'm voting the budget down in the ballot box. I know we need to repair the roads, but that item is too big for me. I don't believe in it. I'm going to vote the whole thing down. And in the ballot box, as you all know, there's no accountability. There's no But this also sort of goes against what you were just talking about, where if we raise or lower an amendment, we should have a reason for it. Because what are people going to say if town meeting says, I want to raise the human services budget by $100,000? Is the reason just that we have unmet needs in the community? Or is it that, and you're not even, the beauty of the current system is people are looking at a list of agencies and saying, the Boys and Girls Club, that's really doing good work. But other people have over the years said, I don't think we should be funding this organization. And maybe the human services budget should change some of its criteria. I've even heard people who are recipients say they're questioning why someone in their organization asks for money because it doesn't, to them, feel so much like human services. I mean, is environmental action human services? I suppose it is, but not to everybody. But the way you have it set up now is the town meeting, which is the public, is going to clamor for more money in the human services budget, but won't be.
Not necessarily.
Or not, or knock it down. Yeah.
But the thing is that I'll end with a question. How did the number 10 years ago, before we got into this fluctuating RTM setting of the amount, my feeling is it got determined by somewhat precedent of previous years, but
Yeah.
also by that long process of building the budget and looking at competing needs in the town and saying, this isn't the year to add to that. But what happens at RTM is a bunch of sort of Johnny-come-latelys come to town meeting who haven't been a part of those competing interest discussions. I mean, when we had the big flood, there was demand for all kinds of infrastructure spending that might have superseded human services for a year or two while we rebuilt basic infrastructure. And I just feel like the select board, I'm going back to my, it sound like a skipping record, as the legislature should be building, and over that public process of building the budget, say, this isn't the year to add 30% to the human services budget. But this system sort of allows the people that show up for town meeting to say, I want to put more money in the checkbook for the human service, and we're not even sure what those organizations are going to be, and I'm afraid it will fuel the fire for Australian.
Can I reply to that? Because I think that that's a well-made point about the contentiousness in the community around this very part of our budget. And what we're trying to do here actually is not fuel a fire, but create a very clear shared responsibility that in fact begins and ends at the select board, right? As the legislature, as the governing body of the town, the select board brings forward a number from that kind of process that you described. They're looking at the whole, working on it for weeks, putting a number in the budget. And that's going to go to town meeting along with the rest of it. And as there always has been, there'll be a separate article related to that item. So there'll be an action on the whole budget, and just prior to that, there'll be an action on this item. It could go up. In recent years it has. It also could go down. We've seen that happen historically as well. And so there'll be the action on human services and the action on the budget coming out of town meeting. Without complicating this conversation about the bigger action on the budget that we've already talked about, the very specific thing related to human services then goes into the rigorous process that the committee has conducted traditionally. They've got written procedures for how they do this and try to keep it transparent and fair. They would go through that same process, but as you say, it would be after the fact. The money would be, the pot of money would be established, and then that process would go on as to how that should be distributed. But when that's done, that recommendation, instead of going to town meeting, which we had some initial conversation about taking it back to town meeting because that is where the authority over this has always resided. But this would be a substantive change that would actually, because of the fact that in order to do it in a timely manner, there'd have to be a special town meeting likely to happen in the middle of the summer. It felt like, that to do that, to convene such a special town meeting just for this one item, especially given the things that we've been wrestling hard with as a community and being kind of divided by as a community, that instead this would go back to the select board to implement either what has been recommended by human services.
I think you're missing Andy's point. Andy's point has to do with A, and how
I think it's both.
How the amount is determined, and
No, I am following what.
Yeah, let me follow it through to the finish, because I think it's both and in the determination piece, I understand there's like some history of when select board did that and it didn't get tinkered with. And then more recently, select board has done that and it did get tinkered with. But I feel that's a different thing. Let's please come back to A, because the finishing point I think is the most important of all, because embedded in your question was this question of accountability and the select board's responsibility for the whole. And so by bringing it back to the select board to make the final decision on the distribution and have this accountability piece built in, just like we did on the budget, that you've received something that has come to you with very clear recommendation out of the town meeting process, And you, as the select board, have the authority and responsibility to discharge what you think is appropriate. So you do it, but if you do it differently than what was recommended, you owe an explanation for why you did it differently.
So the
That's all.
select board could say, we appreciate the great, whether it's a huge, whether it's a slash of this budget or a buffeting of it.
Yes.
We're doing something different because other circumstances in the town.
That's right.
And you're really returning, because I would favor that.
That's what this
Because
is.
I'm feeling like that this is the fire that's being fueled, that RTM is
Yep.
perceived by a considerable number of people in town as spending money without accountability.
So-
And if this would add to that, and I'm gonna give it a fair think through, and I'm doing that now, but I think that to go back to the select board and the select board to stamp it as like, we are approving this.
Yes.
Then the Australian ballot in this hybrid system we have, the public can say, 3 of those members of the select board just they don't understand the pressure I'm going through.
That's right.
As a business person or a homeowner, I want I want different representation on the select board. And right now, it's hard to pin where that spending is originating from and who's accountable for it.
Right.
In the current system. So I'm giving you a really, I really do think that Peter
And-
addressed my issue, and I appreciate it, thank you.
Andy, I think you might have missed this part of the meeting, but the Human Services Board would also be elected.
That's
So
right.
if you don't like what they're doing, you can vote them out too.
Yeah.
And one other point, you said, what can this money be used for? That is actually defined by statute. There are limits. It can't just be for whatever feel-good project we want.
It's pretty wild right now, though, I will say,
And now Joy.
pretty wide ranging.
I was gonna ask about this, if this goes forward, this particular language, so there's probably an embedded question, the information meeting to talk about this section would still, because of the way it has previously been done with RTM with the current fiscal year and next fiscal year, this does not address fiscal year. It's implied that it's a part of, if you're voting in March, you are working on the next year's numbers. And so that's good, yes, but, so the committee, it does say following
Yes.
shall request, so that could be March 16th, it could be June 16th, it could be December 16th,
It
but
could be.
they do their work
Yep.
and the money gets released at the end of the fiscal year?
No, the expectation is they'll get to work right away, so maybe not March 16th, but the thought is that it's about a 3-month process from September to December right now. And so the thought is it would be about a 3-month process from April to July. And July is the beginning of the new fiscal year, so it lines up nicely that there's a decision made one time, not a decision this year, not a this year decision and a next year decision at each town meeting, but instead one decision at each town meeting, which is about how much we're going to spend this year. And then this process unfolds over the next few months. And in the summertime, the select board is making its decision about the distribution. So we're in the new fiscal year, the money's available.
And to be clear, I don't want to bind it to a time. I don't want to say March, June, whatever. I'm A-okay, but the fact that it is, the work is though, the money is released in the same fiscal, like all the money is the same
Yes.
fiscal year money.
Totally, yes.
And so I don't know if that needs to be
So-
stated, if that would help. No?
I don't think we need to say it
Okay.
because this money that's being dealt with in these 3 paragraphs out of the newly created fund, if all of this gets approved, couldn't be spent until July 1st because it doesn't become available until July 1st. So even if the committee went, roaring through its responsibilities and landed in a place in May and brought its recommendations out to the select board, that money couldn't be spent. The select board could make its decision before July 1st, but it couldn't cut checks until July 1st.
Now, can I mention one thing, and this is where, and I know our intent is this, but it doesn't say it. In A, I thought, and I think we just said this, the intent was for the select board to set the money, the dollar amount, and then they make that dollar amount recommendation to town meeting who approves it or not.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm making it more complicated, but I think that's sort of what,
Yeah.
you know, because it makes it sound like
Yeah,
there's
that-
no one setting the stage for what the number is, and it just town meeting gets to decide it out of thin air. And I thought what we talked about at the last meeting, it was, you know, was that in their budget discussions, the select board is going to set the target number and bring it to our.
They would have to, for there to be
Yeah.
consideration of an
Yeah.
action on that at
Right.
town meeting. And we certainly could have a fourth
Right.
paragraph, it could be A, B, C, D.
Yeah.
And so, you know, A would be the creation of the fund, and then B could be select board proposes an amount to town meeting acts on it.
I think that is important based on what Andy is just talking about. And I agree with him that the human services budget has become like a lightning rod and that people don't know who's picking it. So I think this is me personally, just think it's important that it is spelled out that the first target budget number is set by the select board,
Sure.
just like the first target general fund
Yeah.
budget
It
is
would be
set.
consistent with the sequence that we've set up
Yeah.
in for the overall budget. It would
Yeah.
be consistent to do that, to say, where does the number for consideration originate?
Yeah.
At the select board.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes me feel more comfortable about A,
Yeah.
because that means that the people who don't like the human services budget have the opportunity,
To go to
I
the
mean,
select
to go
board.
to the select board.
Of course.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
I mean, they do now,
Which they do now, yeah, that's, I mean.
but they don't, obviously.
And the select board has always said, I mean, now because town meeting is starting it, the select board always says, well, we have nothing to do with the human services budget.
Right.
So
So that
now,
would change.
it brings it back, because when I was on the board, we had,
the hide anymore.
yeah, we were the ones setting
Yeah.
the number for the
That's
human
right.
services budget. And I think that, I agree with Andy, that we need to make that really clear, and that's the responsibility of the select board. And when it gets to OTM under our
Open
recommendations,
town meeting.
that it would be just like another thing, it can be changed, but
Right,
at least.
they'll be acting on a recommendation from the select board. And they'll
yes.
either approve it or change it. And
Yeah.
if they change it, then,
Yeah.
well, regardless, actually, then these other steps ensue.
Yeah.
But, yeah,
And that's exactly what happens now. right?
exactly, that's right.
I mean, so what's presented, for, you know, the board presents the amount of money, and then
Right, well,
RTM then votes on how much, you know, what to present.
no, because right now it's the board isn't presenting the
Oh,
human
they are.
services dollar.
No, the thing that changed, I actually was hesitant to dive into this, it's 9 o'clock, but
Yeah.
if y'all will forgive me for probably somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes, because it's not 3 sentences,
Yeah.
but there is a history, Andy, to what you were describing, like it
Yeah.
used to be so seamless, like wasn't so contentious. Absolutely true. What changed was, there was a time, and it was a little longer than 5 or 6 years ago, I think it was more like around 2017 or 18 maybe, but there was a time in between 2015 and 2020 when at town meeting, what had been a very routine sort of thing where, like you said, sometimes people poked at the number a little bit, but usually it didn't change, and if it changed a little bit. There came a time when there was a philosophical discussion, and there were people in the body who said, we're not spending near enough money on this, it ought to be something higher. And so the first couple of select boards that I reported to actually said, we're not raising this number. It was 120,000, I
We had
think.
it way
and then-
down, yeah.
Yeah, it was like 120, and then there was a time when it went to 140, but, you know, it was really pretty contained at that point, right? And so that happened for several years. And then there was a time when at town meeting, the action on that particular piece was to like double it or something like that in one particular time. And the next year, there was wrestling again around the select board's number, and it got increased a lot. I don't remember by how much. And I believe it was just after those first 2 years, but there came a time when that experience caused the framers of the warning, being the chair of the select board and the moderator and the town clerk and town manager. So we're sitting in a room and we're wrestling with this thing like, you know, we have these 4-hour discussions at town meeting because this is like a major issue now for our community. And the place that that discussion landed was, well, then for clarity, we ought to ask town meeting, what should the number be for next year? And it's one of those like good idea at the time things where that seemed like it would settle something that was otherwise so unsettled that it was really creating divisiveness in the community. But it didn't do that. Instead, it was just, we get to battle twice at every meeting instead of once. And so hopefully, this process, by becoming so clear and so orderly and beginning and ending explicitly with the select board, but still having town meeting have an important independent authority in the middle of it, and the committee having the independent responsibility for all that rigorous review and bringing forward the slate of agencies to distribute the funds to, that there's a balance to that that might get us back to where we were. I don't know where it's going to land us in terms of how much money we're going to spend, but it feels like it's a proper balancing of all the interests, and to the degree that the select board in any given year decides to end up in a place different from what the committee brings forward to them, there is a responsibility, an affirmative responsibility to the select board, just like we're creating over in the budget, to explain why. That's all.
Yeah.
Right? So we as a community can understand what happened. Why did this land in a different place? And either people can like that or people can dislike that, and we can all sort of get on with.
So from a timeline, the select board is going to take and present a number that the town meeting is going to consider.
Yes.
Exactly.
Which in fact has happened in the last 6 years.
Exactly.
And then, once it's approved, if it's accepted without change, that's one thing.
Yep.
But if it's accepted or not accepted and town meeting
Changes it.
changes it, that number then is what's presented, is used by the Human Services Committee.
That's right.
We then give it to the board, or the committee gives it to the board,
Yeah.
and then the board makes the final decision. That's the big change.
That is the big change. And if the board changes it in that moment, the board just needs to explain why.
Right.
And so, there are political dynamics to all of this for sure, but there's political dynamics to it already. And hopefully the responsibility to explain is, in the first instance, a check on just sort of hopefully it makes it for a thoughtful process in the summer when the select board receives this, right? We're going to really wrestle with this thing because maybe we've got it handed to us differently from where we started it, but that's because we're a town and we've been through this process, and it's a big rigorous process, but we still might believe that either for the reasons that the prior select board had added last fall, or for new reasons because of whatever the circumstances are this summer, we're going to land in a different place. And that's fine. You're fully empowered as a select board to do that. You just owe the community an explanation for why.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
So you're gonna draft some language for
For
somebody about.
two additional things.
About the select board determining the amount.
Yep, and about the unspent funds returning to fund balance.
Yes, yeah.
Yep.
Those are the
And
two
I'll
notes.
do the same as we've done. I'll draft it up and I'll run it by hand.
Yeah, okay, those are the two notes I have.
But, there's one more thing on this page, and then we'll take a 2-second break and come back.
Sure.
2-second break. But I think we're all set with you, don't we feel?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
And then on the last page, Peter, I think there's just under D, isn't that it?
Yeah, and this was really just a Scrivener thing. There was a reference to staff, but we're already talking about the Office of Assessment. The Office of Assessment staff, it's like the Office of Assessment staff employees.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just,
Yeah.
so I'm
Yeah.
recommending we delete staff.
yeah.
That's it.
Okay. Why don't we take like a quick break, and then we'll just come back and talk schedule, I think, moving forward.
Good.
We'll figure out what we want to do next.
We should talk about our meeting with John Potter.
Oh, yeah, that's what I mean too, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
for the record, I know I'm super long-winded. It's hard for me to tell a short story, but that 5 to 10 minutes I asked for only required about 4.
Okay.
It's a tour de
Take a
force.
break. We'll be right back at 10 after.
Progress.
We're almost done. Okay, so we've done our old business. Now, just for new business, and I just want to bring this up because it's been on our agenda twice, and Joy had brought up the idea of a standing charter review commission. And I wanted to talk about it now and get to anybody's ideas if we even want to consider this moving forward, because if we do, we need to know tonight, because we only have like 2 more meetings.
And I can give you a brief thing. It came about as a thought because of the non-citizen voting. That is South Burlington, and South Burlington has a body appointed by the select board to look at issues that come up. And given we are opening up the charter, so does it make any sense to have any sort of standing body that can meet once or as needed to deal with emergent charter considerations? And if it's a moot point, fine, but there is a model where it exists. There are the 4 ways to make charter changes in the back that maybe it isn't relevant, but just knowing that there is a model that we might consider. So as a sort of first read, first pass for the consideration, that, bringing that up.
I have thought, because Joy, what was it? Had mentioned it to me, and I've thought a lot about it because we had a conversation. I don't think it's a good idea. I'm not saying your idea is a good, you know what I mean? I just worry that it's almost like, all I can think of is like the Supreme Court or a grand jury. You know how you always have a grand jury that's seated to like indict people or something, you know what I mean? I just kind of feel like I don't think it should be a standing committee, because it's a big deal to change the charter.
Mm-hmm.
And if we have a group of people on standby for like, well, how many years will they be on standby? And who are they? Just, you know what, there's just something about, we have ways to change the charter, and I don't think like we should be on standby for 10 years.
No, you know what I mean? No, it might be.
But I think that's a little bit what concerns me, because you have 6 select board members appointing people who will be on standby to review the charter. I don't know, there's just something.
I think the model I saw was for the community, to give community access to the charter, for them to come and say that these are quote unquote subject matter experts that you could come to, would be the model that I would see it as I think about ways to make working with the charter with the town more accessible. And again, if that feels like a department or something that is way too big and not like worth it in this time, absolutely, totally fine to just to table it for now and maybe jot down a memo for the next crew that comes in as a consideration.
Yeah, we've talked about it, and I've thought about it a lot since then. And there are a number of ways we're going to have that you can amend the charter in between the charter commissions. And so I think it just would be very complicated.
I'm pretty sure the select board could choose to reconvene the charter commission sooner.
Anytime, yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of value to not constantly nitpicking. Like, I mean, we've been doing this, and I think it's good to do this sort of comprehensive review, but like to suddenly start pulling apart every little thing and saying like, well, how can we fix this little bit, and how can we fix that little bit, or you know, if there is something emergent that comes up in the town like non-citizen voting, then you do have a petition, you can do that by the select board. The select board reconvene the charter commission sooner.
Yep.
I don't think there's any need to create any sort of new body.
Thumbs up. Meaning
Not
you can
that-
table.
Your idea wasn't, I didn't mean your idea was bad. It has merit. All right, so do we feel like we're okay moving forward? Okay. Now we have, I want to just talk about this now because everything's going to happen really fast. So just to do a recap of the schedule moving forward is we have now 3 more meetings in August. And that's the 14th, 21st, and 28th. We need to be at the select board on September 9th, which is a Tuesday. We're gonna have to get our stuff to them, the week of the 1st, because, they put the packets together and everything. I think we have to decide, Bob Fisher is gonna come to our meeting on August 21st. I didn't want him to come, right now, our last August meeting is the 28th. Does it make sense for us to shoot for August 21st to have as much of a charter as humanly possible together, so we go literally through page by page with Bob? I mean, does that make sense? And then we would have the 28th to sit there and go, okay, is there anything that we've, that we talked about on the 21st that we're now gonna look at in another form, because we'd have to write it or something between the 21st and the 28th. So my question is, do we wanna leave the meeting on the 28th with the final charter that we're prepared to go to the select board? Or do we want, do we think we can do that? Do we think on the 28th we'll be ready to say, this is it? Or do we need to have another meeting the week of September 1st? Next week, if we can have what we talked about tonight done to look at.
Yep.
And maybe even ourselves flip through whatever we got done with the charter again next week. I'm trying to figure out the use of the time that we have. And, could we, do you think, get this thing done so on the 28th we can say this is it? We're all gonna look at it and go, yeah, we think this is it.
I think we almost have to, because the first week in September includes Labor Day, and if we meet on the 4th, then we only have a few days before the 9th.
Well, we'd have to have our document to them no later than the 5th. So what
I would suggest that we aim to go with the schedule Kate proposed, rather than try and stretch it out at all, because then we have a buffer if we end up needing it, as opposed to putting ourselves right up against an absolute hard deadline. I'd rather shoot for an ambitious goal and have some cushion than the other way around.
Yeah. So our ambitious goal is to have something on the 21st that we could literally go page by page through with Bob.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then we'd have the, oops, we forgot something, blah, 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 blah. And we'll have the 28th to solidify it and say, this is it.
Yeah.
And I think next week, if we go through and make some of these changes from tonight, we can talk about all of that next week, and I'll make sure that I go through the agenda, go through and see, is there anything big that we have to talk about again on the 14th?
Question, because brains work differently. The information that ideally we will see on the 21st would be a mock-up like we've already seen with some.
Everything.
Is it possible to have a clean, two copies, so one with the markup and one that's totally clean, let's say we could approve it that night? So that way we could see it as a quote-unquote final document, but also see the markup and go, what changed to make that document?
My suggestion would be that on the 21st, we go through the marked up one, and then on the 28th, look at the clean one as sort of like a final proof, as opposed to trying to do both at the same time on the 21st. Just have the marked up one and go through that with Bob, because he'll know, I think it would be helpful for him to be able to see the changes.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can look at sort of have the goal be to look at the edited version on the 21st and the clean version on the 28th.
Yeah. Now, when do you think us looking at the reordering, should we do that on the 21st?
I would suggest that next week I can come in with
everything we've done so far as complete as we can have it, and then we could maybe take the next meeting to say, here's where we want to move things, and then have that ready for that review on the 21st.
Okay, so on the 14th, we can talk about reordering. And we'll have the new select board, town manager, finance language in there. You know, so that'll be compiled.
Yes,
Or
except for the,
Things we're
like,
changing.
3 or 4 different things that are gonna be a
Drafts.
new layer of
Yes.
changes for that. But if
Yeah.
you could take and accept the changes so far, then I can take your new master document and just go into those sections where there has to be some additional language
And make them
and do
purple.
some additional language just on those focused pieces.
Yeah, so we can try to shoot next week for having all of the language
In one document.
in one document and then try and sort it.
Yeah.
And then you could, in that one big document, you'll either do the purple or blue for the.
That's what I'm thinking,
changes.
so that we don't have like 2 more colors. If you do the thing where you're accepting them in, then the purple and blue stuff from tonight becomes green and red.
Yeah.
And then I add some more purple and blue, but just in 3 or 4 spots.
Yeah, and then I would say, it's too ambitious, but I would say I would try and have a clean draft to work off too, just because I know some people do prefer to look at it that way, but
Sure.
I just don't think until we're comfortable on like the final,
Right,
that it makes sense to have that clean version too.
okay.
Just because these
So-
aren't actually track changes, this is literally strike through and
Okay.
color.
Fair.
Like I can't just like turn off changes.
Totally.
Right.
No worries.
Right, there's
So,
a piece of
so
work
let
to
me
do
get
there.
this straight for agenda purposes. On the 7th, which is next week.
14th,
Today's the 7th.
Oh, the 14th.
14th.
So the 14th, we're gonna look at a complete draft?
Hopefully.
As
With changes.
complete to date draft.
Okay.
Yeah.
It'll have more.
With a few new tweaks that you won't have seen before that'll be based on what we discussed tonight.
Yeah.
Okay, and then on the 21st,
We're gonna
we'll
go-
talk about reordering.
No,
No.
on the
We're-
14th, we'll reorder.
We're gonna talk about.
We're gonna reorder and look at the full
Yeah,
draft. Okay.
and then on the 21st, Bob is gonna be with us, and we're gonna go
Through the entire
page by
thing.
page with
Yeah.
Bob.
Yeah,
And I think once we go through it, like even next week when we go through it, we might spot something like, oh, you know. And we do it, I'm gonna go through things because we have to decide the glossary and
Yeah,
all of that
that's right.
stuff. So we'll make a list and put it on the agenda.
Preamble.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But I think this is like totally,
Yes.
it feels
Doable.
like we're getting
Mhm.
to where we need to be.
Definitely.
Yeah,
So do we feel okay about the next couple of weeks?
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, so let me just zoom forward to October. The only reason I want us to start talking about this now because it's August and then September is gonna be crazy and, because the plan is to do public education in October. The schedule has changed a tad as I emailed all of you folks. We're gonna go before the select board on the 9th and present all of our work. Then we're going to, they're gonna have a meeting on the 24th. It's a regular meeting, they've just changed the date, I don't understand why.
Rosh Hashanah.
Yeah, but
Mm.
I thought that's the 30th, I was confused, does it start on the 23rd? I don't know, my calendar says the 30th, but who knows? My
Rosh-
calendar's from the dollar store, so.
Rosh Hashanah.
So-
Rosh Hashanah is the 23rd.
Well, my calendar is like so the $1.25 store. So they're gonna come back on the 24th. It's a regular meeting, and there's a possibility that they're gonna discuss the charter again on the 24th.
Several of us will be there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yes, I'll be zooming. Anyway, so the 24th. Then they're gonna come back and vote on October, confirming the date, October 3rd, on what they're putting on the warning.
Is that a public meeting?
Yes.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
is that again 6:15?
I don't know. They haven't said the time yet.
Okay.
It'll be the only thing I think they talk about, so for all we know, they could do it October
And-
3rd, Friday? Yeah, because it's
We have to
within-
have it 30 days before the vote.
Oh, right,
which is
that's right,
November
yeah.
4th.
And
Between
Thursday,
30 and 40, yeah.
and Thursday is Yom Kippur.
Yeah, so they're gonna do it, that's their schedule right now. So in the world that we live in, we can't wait to know what they do on the 3rd, if we're gonna do October 3rd, if we're gonna do things. So I think we need to start planning, like right now, at least, like literally everything, but if we wanna do 3 public events, we need to get them on the books, like now. You know, we'll decide if we actually do them on October 3rd, but we'll have them
Yeah.
in the books.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
I went and I spoke to, just in anticipation of this meeting, Maya and I'll skip backwards a minute. Maya and I met with John Potter, said to him we wanted to do 3 events. We wanted to make sure that the town was okay with it, since we're gonna be asking the town to maybe pay for some stuff, even though we're gonna try really hard not to spend any money. And he was like, yes, fine, you guys can do what you want. Within reason. Like Jennifer, you know, like we can't go to Hawaii.
So, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, we can't go to Hawaii. So, and he's fine with us we had said to him, we were thinking about doing 3 different places and times. And Maya and I had said, you know, we were thinking of maybe Academy School and maybe Oak Grove School and then like the library. And he was fine, and he's fine us reaching out, but if we need help, like if we call Academy School and they don't believe that we're real people, we can have Jessica or, you know, I mean, someone else call on our behalf. So in anticipation, after that meeting, in anticipation of tonight, I talked to BCTV, and I thought I want to give them the heads up that we have this big plan for October. And what I talked about, and this was my idea, and they want to do, help us and do whatever we want, but it seemed to me we don't have to have BCTV cover 3 meetings where our intended purpose is the same thing, which is to explain our charter changes. So, and if you guys can, I said to BCTV, this is just me, I'm gonna talk to 5 other people who may totally disagree with me. And we're not gonna have a Zoom component in it, so there's no reason to be live. So what I talked to BCTV about is having them come to one of the meetings and tape the whole thing and rebroadcast it 24/7, and we can put it on all of those things. Because our intent, literally, to me, is in all the 3 meetings, the solid thing we have to do at all 3 meetings is explain page 1 of the charter, blah, 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 blah. Obviously, people will come and want to talk about specific things, and we'll engage in whatever they want to talk about, but the 3 meetings in essence have the same purpose, which is to explain our charter changes. Mm-hmm. So that's why I was talking to them about only taping 1 meeting, because unless you folks think there's a reason to tape 3, you also confuse people, well, why is that meeting different than that other meeting? Am I watching something different? When the content is gonna be essentially the same, except for maybe what we're hearing from the
Q&A.
administration. Yeah.
Just one quick question on that. So we may not be able to decide this tonight unless, Anna, you know the answer to this off the top of your head, but I thought that there had been a change in the state law regarding open meetings where you had to have a hybrid aspect. Is that not the case, that we would have to have a Zoom?
Only for certain kinds of meetings, and I'll double check, but I'm pretty sure we would only have to make it hybrid if someone requested it.
I see.
But I'll double check on that, 'cause there's different rules for advisory board, but my recollection is that for something like this, we're not mandated to have a hybrid option.
We didn't have BCTV at our forum meeting.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did. But the
But
thing
we
is-
didn't have Zoom.
No.
That's what I meant. We didn't have, yeah.
But at the info meeting for representative town meeting, do they have the Zoom option? Could you Zoom?
Yes.
You could?
I don't think that
Right,
it's
and
Zoom.
I-
I think it's just televised on BCTV.
No, it's just, you
Right.
can watch it.
Because that's basically.
Yep, got it.
And I think there
That makes
is
sense.
a sort of logistics exemption.
But if it's-
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
find that out, because there wasn't one. The only reason I thought we didn't need to is because the info meeting, I didn't think had that.
Yeah, I'm probably incorrect
Yeah.
about it,
No.
but I just want to make sure we dot that I.
Yeah, they did do something. So
I would recommend if
BCTV's gonna come tape it, maybe they'd come to the first one.
That's
so
what I
it
was
can
thinking
be
too.
Broadcast the longest.
Yeah, I
that's
thought,
great.
that's what we're on the same page, because I said that when I was talking to them too, saying, if you come to the first one, and this is my thought too, is the first one, I think we'll be able to be more structured on, because nobody's about to know what we're talking about, so I think people might be more willing to listen. So that was my thought too, is they come to the first one. Today, I went to the library, and discussed it with them and said, hey, you got, and they're super into it. And I thought, this is just me again. I said to them, I have to go and talk to my fellow 5 other people because I'm just whipping. I wanted to have some information to talk to tonight. I thought the library, my thought would be if we can get Academy School to do the first one because that's a big space up there. Again, this is just my thought. And then, do that on a weeknight, but have the library host us on a Saturday, because it would be a Saturday. And
I think I would just be cautious about the amount of people that could attend on a Saturday.
Right, well, and that's why I'm like,
Yeah.
just running
Yeah.
this by you guys, because, and they're happy to do it on a Saturday. I mean, we could do it there on an evening too, but that's why I thought if we do something like at Academy School first, maybe everybody will come to a bigger space. But the library's open to us doing something there. And we talked about Saturday today just because I was thinking a night one, like at Academy School, but we can work with them on the dates. So they're super into us doing something there.
I would want to do something at the library. I'm just cautious that that location draws people differently than any other location.
Yep.
And a Saturday where a traditional 9 to 5 job would have you available at a very easy to get to space, or it's a totally different space for even your mind. I'm very on board. My only concern is, would it be the largest group?
Yeah.
Sibley, there was a lot of people at Sibley when I was there, and there was people standing
Hanging
up and
everywhere,
about.
yeah.
They fit a lot of people in there.
Yeah.
And I don't think there'd be that many.
Okay.
Yeah.
If that would be my only concern, but otherwise I'm
Because
happy.
they did the EMS hearing there too, and there were a ton of people there.
I've been to things when people are in the balcony and.
And I think maybe, I absolutely think they have protocols, but I think we would just need to reiterate to them to feel free to maintain your protocols. There will be other meetings. Folks can show up at a different time if it's unsafe.
Yeah. Yeah. So those were the extent of the discussions I have. I haven't called anybody else. I figure I wanted to check in with BCTV, give them the heads up to what our thoughts are for October, because they have a lot of things.
Did they give us a date?
No,
BCTV?
No. Yes, I have I have dates that work for them, which is pretty much when we need them in the first. I have the dates. I can't remember what they are because I left them at my house. But it's like the first week of October. They're pretty. Both the BCTV and the library Lit Fest is the 17th, 18th, and 19th. So they're crazy. But we could do something with BCTV the first week of October, or the week of the 6th. And I think they might have. It'll work. It'll work if we want to have a meeting in early October that BCTV can tape. They're all into it for us.
Okay.
They're also said we could go into their studio and maybe do some really short, like snippets of very clear, like what day is the vote? And we can go, it's November 4th. They'll do some short things that they can rebroadcast for us.
Good.
So the BCTV, if we pick a date in October that wherever we want to do it, that we want them to tape it, we can pretty much get it done.
So are you proposing 2 public information meetings, one at Academy School and one at the library?
Well, we had been talking about 3.
We had.
But I was just using Academy School, Oak Grove School, and the library as ideas, and I figured BCTV is here and the library is right there, and I could go talk to them.
Right.
So I haven't talked to anybody else because I wanted this to be our
That's
position.
why I was asking,
Yeah.
because we had been talking about 3, and we had been talking about the elementary schools, although I like the idea of using the library instead of Green Street for the one that's downtown.
Yeah.
That feels right to me,
Yeah.
and it saves money.
Yeah.
An academy is great. I do think that we should think about having a third at Oak Grove so that we are in
Yeah.
3 separate sections of town and make it as convenient as possible for people to come out.
Yeah.
So, because of the Lit Fest, we probably would have to do the library last.
No, the library, the date.
On the 11th?
Yeah, that was the date that worked best for the library, is the 11th.
Sure.
So do we want to do 2 that week?
I think we do whatever we can do.
The 7th and the
Look at
11th?
Joyce.
Do we all need to be present?
No,
Okay.
Yeah, no.
On the 11th, are you thinking morning?
yeah, yeah. I don't think it's mandatory that we're all there.
Okay, I'll still, it's okay, I'll work on it.
I mean, it would be great if we could get them both, I mean, the taped one in the first week of,
Yeah. Okay, no worries.
Well,
but then we do one
So would we want them
later.
to, would we want them to tape the one at the library?
If we made that the first one, they could do that.
When were you thinking about academy?
I don't know, that's what,
If you break it up, then it could be like the week of the 20th. I mean, I wouldn't want to go too late. But I think some of this is also availability, so
Right.
it's.
Maybe we should like send around a doodle poll and find out what works for everyone on our end and
Yeah.
then sort of match that up with.
The schools.
I think that's a good idea, and I also think that we should try to front end. I understand that there's a blackout period for the library, but if we were to do the library on the 11th and then try for 2 first half of October times with
Yeah.
the schools, because there's also early voting.
yeah. I think
So
wanna
we
get-
don't want to be
schools are gonna be
doing like
closed the-
October 28th.
The first half of the week of the 13th.
The 13th is Indigenous Peoples'
Yeah,
Day,
and then
that's
they're
a
usually
Monday.
closed through Wednesday,
The schools are.
I think, right?
Oh, I don't think so. I think it's just a
They're
Monday.
usually
Monday,
closed on-
Tuesday?
Okay.
I don't know, it's usually like sort of fall break, but it's not a full week as
Right.
if it's 2 or 3 days.
Well, also, that might actually be a good time for us to hold it if the custodial staff is not taking that same break that the kids and the teachers are taking. I don't know. I mean, then there's less to compete against in terms of school uses of the space.
It would probably still have to be evening, though. I would not count on a daytime,
Mhm.
partially for work and for the
Sure.
people who are vacationing.
Especially weekday.
So we need to
Maybe-
find out from Hillary when early voting would start.
So the 15th is the school's closed and the 16th is teacher in service.
Okay.
Or, yeah.
So it might be actually there. The teachers might be there doing
So, I'm
their-
sorry, the 13th and the 14th.
Okay.
All right, so what I will do is send around a little doodle poll to all of us saying, with all the options of nights, you know, but do we,
I think the 11th at the library
Mhm.
in the morning is
Yeah.
a good
So
idea.
I will confirm that with them tomorrow, so we get it on the books.
Okay.
And we could have BCTV do that one.
And then we have to talk about exactly what we're presenting, but we have time to talk about that. I just want us to get all this on the schedule, because
Sure.
we're dealing with outside people.
Yeah.
I'm not saying no, just saying if it is Columbus Day weekend,
Mhm,
starting on Friday the 10th,
mhm,
11th, 12th, 13th.
mhm,
Again, it's not a problem, I'm just naming it.
Mm-hmm.
mhm.
A potential for tourists to be moving around town,
Mhm.
not only some people being on vacation, so maybe that actually reduces the amount of people at the
Mhm.
library, but I'm just acknowledging there's the possibility of tourism
Mhm,
and
mhm,
more bodies downtown.
mhm.
And people going away.
Absolutely going away. I'm just
Right.
Well, if we're
naming-
taping, if we're
So they
taping,
can't come because they went away.
Right.
yeah.
We're taping
Right, it
it.
might reduce
We're
the amount of
gonna-
people that would
We're
show
we're
up.
taping it.
We're
We have
gonna
to
tape
measure.
that one.
No, yeah,
I think we just have to remember too, we are taping these things so that people can, if you can't come to any of the meetings, it's still accessible,
Yes.
you know? Because I think if we try to make it so that, like, 9,000 voters can come, we're never gonna pick a day.
No.
Yeah.
I'm even thinking of leaf peepers who have like gone to the farmer's market and have now
Yeah.
made their way downtown. Are like,
Yeah.
oh, that's a cute library. Why is everyone in the library?
They'll come and they'll know about our tour.
That's
What kind of vacations you're going on, Bob?
Okay, I think we're getting punchy.
Okay, so does that sound good to everybody, like where we are? And then we'll do that, and then we can figure out who can help organize these things.
Sure.
At least, yeah. I'll tell the library, save us, we'll book in on the 11th. Okay. All right, do we want to adjourn?
Yes.
We're done. Okay, all those in favor of adjourning? Aye. We adjourn. See you next week.
Indeed.
Next week.